Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now.
You don't like me. When you look in your mirror, surely you tell yourself you are beautiful. Oh, I am very sure you often tell yourself that. Do you admire your fit body after the gym and tell yourself you are perfect? Or at least think you are? The feeling of rejection followed him throughout his life. It was there when school children pushed him and laughed at his looks. His face wasn't horrific, but it had imperfections. A slightly crooked nose, uneven skin tone, eyes that always seemed tired. The children called him monster, mocking him mercilessly. He wore glasses and a fixed brace for his teeth. He never had any friends. He always sat alone in the back of the classroom, trying to hide from a world that didn't want him. His mother was the only person who loved him, or so she claimed. She told him not to listen to what others said, that people are cruel. But her words were not enough. When she died, he was left alone. Loneliness became a constant in his life, deep and heavy like a stone choking him. Years later, technology offered him a new chance. On social media, no one needed to see his face right away. He could carefully choose his words, write messages that were thoughtful, kind. For a moment, he believed he could find someone who would understand him. But the responses were always the same. Sorry, you're not my type. Please don't message me again. You're creepy. Each message was another blow. He tried again, each time hoping for a different outcome. But they all rejected him, and their words were like poison chilling his blood. One night, as he sat at his computer reading another rejection message, something in him snapped. His hands trembled as he closed his laptop. "Why?" he whispered, addressing the empty room. His voice was quiet, but it trembled with anger. Why me? The world didn't want him. That was now clear. But he no longer wanted them. They had made him this way, and he would no longer beg. He didn't have to belong to their world. The idea was faint at first, like a shadow on the edge of consciousness. But as the days passed, it became clearer. He began to imagine a perfect being, someone who would never reject him, someone who wouldn't see his imperfections. In his mind, everything became clearer. Every woman he had ever seen had something special. Eyes, smile, hands, legs. He could combine all those perfect parts into one being. The first victim was a girl he had watched in a store. Her eyes were incredible, deep blue, almost unreal. He had followed her for days, studying her habits. He noticed she always took the same path home, a dark alley behind a building. One night, as the rain lightly fell, he waited in the shadows. His heart raced as he gripped the knife in his pocket. When she appeared, her steps were quiet, but they echoed in his head. He approached from behind, his hand trembling as he drew the knife. It all happened quickly. Her body fell onto the concrete with a dull thump. He carried her to his basement, avoiding streetlights. His body was tense, his heart pounding in his chest, but he felt something akin to excitement. In the basement, under the dim light of a bulb, he sat at a table. Her eyes were fixed on him, lifeless, yet still perfect. With surgical precision, he removed them and prepared them. When he placed them on the face of the doll, he experienced a joy he had never felt before. "Perfect," he whispered, looking at the doll that had just received its first aspect of perfection. His obsession grew with each new victim. After the first, he felt an indescribable relief. The doll, although still incomplete, now had eyes that radiated perfection. But it wasn't enough. He knew he had to continue. Every night he left his house, choosing carefully. Each woman had something he deemed worthy. Sometimes he sat in cafes, quietly observing passers-by. His eyes focused on the minute details, the shape of fingers, the line of a neck, a perfect smile. The second victim was a woman with beautiful hands. Her fingers, long and delicate, were like instruments that captivated his attention. He followed her for several days, studying her habits. He realized she always went to a small shop at the end of the street on Thursdays, always alone. The preparation was perfect. That evening, he waited around the corner where the lamp's light didn't reach. When she walked past him, he quickly grabbed her. Her body was light, her resistance weak. Her hands were now part of his puzzle. When he returned to the basement, he felt joy as he assembled parts of the doll. The fingers fit perfectly onto the body he was carefully constructing. He sat for hours, watching his work. "It's getting closer," he whispered to himself. The third victim was a woman with a smile that captivated him. Her lips were shaped as if always ready to smile. He followed her as she walked her dog in the park, noting every detail of her face. The basement windows were closed, covered with layers of old newspapers and sticky tape. Light only came from a single bulb hanging on a cable above a table covered with blood-stained cloths and scalpels arranged in perfect order. The floor was covered with a plastic sheet that crackled under his steps. The basement was his refuge, a place where the world couldn't find him. In the basement, his work began to take shape. Each body part was carefully chosen and joined with precision. The doll now had eyes, hands, lips, even hair, all parts of his vision of perfection. Every evening, he sat beside her, talking to her. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, as he recounted events from the past. He told her about school days when he was the subject of ridicule, about days when he was invisible to everyone except those who wanted to hurt him. He had to continue to complete his creation. He enjoyed the company of his perfect masterpiece. Soon he found many more victims to add even more perfect female parts. He was captivated. With a smile, he talked to her about life. She listened silently and watched him with her deep blue eyes. His steps echoed through the quiet streets. As he watched passers-by, every detail on their bodies was potential. The shape of hands, the line of a jaw, the curve of a neck, all had the potential to become part of his vision. His latest target was not random. She was a woman he had seen at the bus stop every evening. Her hair, light like gold, fell over her shoulders, and her hands were gentle yet strong. In her eyes, he saw the peace he lacked. He followed her carefully from a distance, studying every move she made. In her, he saw the key to completing his creation. The basement had become everything to him. The thick, cold walls retained the scents of his deeds, the smells of decay, chemicals, and metal. On the table, tools lay in perfect order. The scalpel was the most important, sharp, precise. As he worked, he felt like an artist. His hands were steady, his movements careful. The doll was becoming his only truth, the only thing that gave him a sense of purpose. As he sat in front of his creation, he felt he had reached the pinnacle, but that perfection did not bring peace. His pain did not disappear. The doll could not speak, could not provide what he truly lacked: love. The decay was unbearable. The doll, his masterpiece, began to decompose before his eyes. The smell seeped into every pore, and the body parts, once perfect, now became shadows of what they had been. "Why?" he whispered, as he sat on the chair, head bowed. "Why can't I keep what is perfect?" As he sat beside his doll, he watched as the light from the bulb fell on her unnaturally white eyes that once were blue. He spoke to her softly, almost tenderly, as if to someone who understood all his pains. "You are the only thing in this world that is true," he said. But the world does not allow perfection. Everything that is beautiful, everything that has value, they destroy it. The light went out, but the silence didn't bring peace. The doll remained motionless as the darkness of the basement enveloped its body. In that darkness, the only sound was his breathing, uneven, heavy, as if each breath carried the weight of years of pain. The light went out, but the silence didn't bring peace. The doll remained motionless as the darkness of the basement enveloped its body. In that darkness, the only sound was his breathing, uneven, heavy, as if each breath carried the weight of years of pain. He sat across from the doll, leaning on a chair that creaked under his weight. He looked at it, at the eyes he had chosen so carefully, at the hands he had joined with precision, at the smile that once seemed to him like the answer to all his unspoken prayers. But now, in the darkness, the silence gave him no solace. "Why is everything I touch doomed to ruin?" he muttered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. The silence didn't soothe him. On the contrary, it grew louder. In it, he could hear every unspoken reproach of the world that had rejected him. He heard the voices of the girls who mocked him, the whispers of children who ridiculed him, the words women sent him on social media. "You're creepy. You're not my type. Please don't message me again." Those words, buried deep in his mind, echoed as his hands trembled on his knees. The doll was now complete, but the emptiness within him grew larger. He felt that space devouring him from the inside, as if even all the body parts he had so carefully selected couldn't fill what he lacked. "You are everything I ever wanted," he whispered, addressing it. His eyes were full of tears that couldn't fall. "But why do I still feel this way?" He raised his hand and gently touched its face. It was cold, rigid, motionless. There was no life in it. "Is this all I have?" The silence didn't answer. That night, he sat in the basement as hours passed. He stared into the darkness, thinking about every moment of his life, about every glance that passed over him as if he didn't exist, about every judgment and every rejection. "If perfection doesn't exist," he said quietly to himself, "then what is left for me?" He closed his eyes. His hands slipped off his knees, and his head fell back. The darkness enveloped him completely as his world grew quieter than ever before. Several hours passed. The basement was filled with silence, but it was no longer the same. It was thicker, heavier, pressing down on every part of his body. His breathing became slower, quieter, as he silently repeated the sentences he often said. "You are everything I ever wanted," he whispered. His voice was now lifeless, as though it shattered against the basement walls and immediately vanished. He reached out toward the doll and touched its face. The surface was cold, almost hostile, and for a moment, it felt like it was rejecting him. He pulled his hand back, like a child recoiling from a flame. "You were supposed to love me," he said louder. His eyes, now dry, stared into its eyes, empty, lifeless, full of reflections of everything he had lost. In the doll, he saw himself. Every piece had been chosen to create perfection, but now he understood that perfection was nothing but an illusion. His creation was a reflection of himself, stitched together from fragments that could never be whole. "I gave everything for you," he whispered, lowering his head into his hands. "Everything I had, I gave." But in the silence of the basement, he began to understand the truth. The doll couldn't love him because it had no soul, and she, like him, was nothing but emptiness. Memories began to flood over him. He saw his mother gently hugging him, telling him not to pay attention to what others thought. He remembered her smile, the last smile he had ever felt as genuine. "Where are you now?" he whispered into the darkness. But that smile had been lost long ago, just like everything else. The doll couldn't love him, the world couldn't love him, and he could no longer love himself. The silence became unbearable. The emptiness inside him was too vast. His hand moved toward the light switch but didn't turn it on. Instead, he sank to the floor, leaning against the wall. and closed his eyes. As he sat in the dark, he realized there were no more answers. The doll, his only companion, stood motionless, a shadow in the darkness. His sigh rose softly, but it wasn't a prayer or a threat. It was the end. "You think you are perfect?" he said for the last time. His voice was weak, almost extinguished. "You are wrong. Perfection doesn't exist."
Monochromatic. This story includes depictions of mental health and death. There is nothing graphic, but these topics are touched on. I had never been quite fond of Eve as her psychiatric nurse, the buoy who kept her from drowning in an ocean of madness. I should have made an effort to respect my patient. I should have, and yet I couldn't. It was unbearable to deal with a soul so far gone, someone so dreadfully insane. Nonetheless, Evelyn Barrett was still mine to care for, my own burden. It was odd to dwell on the fact that someone so young, barely even 18 to be exact, could mentally fall down such a slippery slope. Eve was admitted to the sanitarium around 2 months ago, following her breakdown at school. According to her classmates, Eve had never been social. She tended to keep to herself when given the choice. And while this was not abnormal behavior for a teenage girl, it had always been different with Eve. Well, it had grown to become different. Students began reporting incidents involving Eve. They would hear her muttering to herself in class, her words unintelligible, but her whispers crazed. They would hear her sobbing in bathroom stalls. Her teachers noticed her grades slipping. Eve would write ominous messages on her papers, and she would draw horrific drawings in her notebook. Drawings of characters plucked straight from horror movies, monsters. Though her behavior was abnormal, Eve caused no problems. She remained silent, which was nothing out of the ordinary. She basked in the endless insanity of her paranoid, twisted mind. But at that time, no one was aware of how truly twisted it was. After months of containment, Eve suddenly exploded. She jumped up in the middle of class and shrieked, screaming bloody murder. Accounts of the story from her classmates explained that Eve screamed, "Leave me alone," dozens of times. According to the witnesses, Eve was not talking to a specific person, not one that anyone could see anyway. Her teachers restrained her and subdued her screams. Her behavior was, according to her classmates, purely and utterly horrifying, insane. And so, I was stuck with Evelyn Barrett. I tried to build connections with my patients, and usually, I was successful. Over my years as a nurse, I liked to think that my psychological support helped my patients heal. It did. There was no doubt about it. I did my job well until Eve came along. For some odd reason, I could not break through with Eve, break into her subconscious and heal her fragile mind. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she would do one of two things. Either she would completely block me out, or she would scream nonsense at me. In any case, neither method was beneficial in the slightest. The past 2 months had consisted of pointless therapy sessions and no progress whatsoever. I couldn't help but feel sorry for the poor girl. As I walked into my tidy office, I pushed out a sigh and slumped into my armchair. Eve was scheduled to meet with me at any second, and to be quite honest, I was dreading our session. Up until now, my day had been calm. My serenity was about to be interrupted simply by being in the presence of the crazed child. 3 knocks on the door was all it took. My spine straightened, and I felt the muscles in my neck tighten. My automatic physical response whenever Eve was near. The creaking of the door disturbed my therapeutic silence, and as I watched a caretaker escort Eve through the doorway, a queasy feeling began to form in my gut. Eve seemed on edge today, more on edge than normal. Her long cascade of honey blonde hair was ruffled, as though she couldn't be bothered to run a comb through it. Her face was a sickly shade of white. The shadows casted upon her face complemented the lack of life within her frozen, gray eyes. Eyes that hardly looked like eyes at all. She looked dreadful. The caretaker made sure that Eve settled comfortably on the couch before taking her leave. Nevertheless, Eve looked nothing but uncomfortable. She brought her knees to her chest and hugged them tightly, her body resembling something of a ball. Her hands shook while her feet tapped on the cushion over and over again. It was easy to assume that nerves had Eve in a chokehold. "How are you doing today, Eve?" I asked the girl, my voice visibly annoyed. I didn't care enough to put on a facade for her. Eve wasn't fond of me, as far as I could tell. It was obvious by the way her eyes ever so slightly cut into my face, as though they were 2 honed knives. Regardless, the feeling was mutual, and so treating one another this way had become routine. Usually when I asked her a question, Eve ignored it completely. I assumed she would simply ignore me by the way her gaze dug into my skin, and so I wasted no time before pulling out my notebook. Lazily, I jotted down a note. "Silence," I wrote. Nothing out of the ordinary, until I heard a raspy breath emerge from her mouth. "He's going to kill me soon," Eve muttered, her voice barely a whisper. I could hardly comprehend her words. Her empty eyes widened as her fingernails dug into her pants. The girl rocked back and forth in a crazed manner, almost as though she truly feared for her life. I, for one, believed that Eve was bananas, but as her nurse, I could not disregard such an alarming phrase. "Who? Who's going to kill you?" I asked, as calmly as possible. Though I knew that Eve was completely mad, I knew that she was. Her words still managed to send a chill through my bones. Eve disregarded my words for a moment, her mind unable to flee from whatever eternal nightmare it was trapped in. Her gaze remained on the ground and focused on anything but me. Seconds ticked by. Minutes. Finally, Eve's eyes snapped to mine, somehow more frantic than before. He's taking over my life, the world around me, everything. She snapped loudly, her sharp words making me flinch. Her body recoiled after her outburst, and she scrunched back into her ball with a shaken expression on her face. "He's going to kill me soon," she repeated. "I just know it." With a sigh, I set my notebook aside and leaned forward. This wasn't the first time that Eve had acted up during a session, but this was the first time that she seemed so sure. So sure about the fact that something was bothering her. I said, "You are safe here, Eve. Nothing is going to kill you. This is all in your mind, okay? You're okay." "No, please, Debbie. I am not insane. This is real," Eve persisted. Hearing her say my name was odd. She had never addressed me before, and until now, I did not know that she even knew my name. He's out to get me. The Shadow Man. He's the Shadow Man?" I repeated incredulously. Despite Eve's urgency, I did not believe her words. Her crazed, perplexing words. She had never once opened up to me like this, and so I had no reason to believe that she was telling the truth now. Instead of dismissing her comment, I wanted to dig further. It was my job, after all. "Who is he?" Eve shuddered, as though a gust of icy wind had blown through the room. "I don't know." She paused abruptly and locked eyes with me. "But he takes things from me. He steals them." Despite my confusion, I played into her claim. "What does he take from you?" Eve blinked multiple times. "Color. Color? The color that I see. The color that she sees. What does that mean, Eve?" I asked, and anxiety grasped my brain. Her answer, while strange, was also oddly specific. And something about that was off-putting. Color blindness. Was that what Eve was hinting at? Were colors fading from her vision? I took my assumption and rolled with it. "Does your family have a history of color blindness?" That sounded about right. Perhaps Eve was losing her sense of color, and she was freaking out about it. That wouldn't be anything out of the ordinary, but it was obviously nothing to go crazy about. No, it's not color blindness. He takes the color from me." She snapped again, her expression flushing with maroon fury. "You're wrong. I am not crazy. You think I am, but I'm not. I'm not." Suddenly, Eve was on her feet, marching across the room to my desk. I sat up out of habit and hesitated. Eve seemed angry. Was she going to attack me? Grab for a weapon? I decided to take no chances, and I, too, rose to my feet. I turned to face Eve, only to find that she was inspecting various objects on my desk. Colored pens, Post-its, my computer. "It's all black and white. Everything." She picked up a lime green post-it and shook it in her hand. I can't tell what color this is. He stole it from me. It's gone. It's all gone. He's gonna kill me once everything is gone. Eve, calm down. No, I can't. Eve paused abruptly when her eyes fell upon a particular object on my desk. Her mouth gaped open as she snatched the object, inspecting it in awe. I almost reached for her arm and demanded for her to put the object down, but I restrained myself. Eve held the card that my daughter had made for me years ago. On the front of the card was a drawing of a rainbow, colored messily with crayon. My daughter had handcrafted the card when I fell terribly ill, and I believe that the card itself had cured me. I had kept it lying on my desk all these years, and the messy rainbow had been my constant reminder that color can supply us with life and wellness. And now, as Eve's shaky hands grasped the card, I fought the urge to snatch it from her. This card was precious to me. I couldn't risk her ruining it. It's colorful. She gasped in awe, her eyes absorbing the card as though its sparkles were emitting from it. I can see the rainbow. He hasn't stolen it from me. Suddenly, Eve's guard was up once again, and she clenched the card against her chest. I winced as the paper grew crinkled in her strong grasp. I need to keep this card with me. I can't let the Shadow Man steal it. It's all I have left. Protectively, I shook my head. My deranged patient could not be trusted with my precious card, my personal gift from my daughter. No, I don't think that's... Debbie, please, Eve urged. For one moment, the desperation in her voice made her sound sane. This is life or death. I am not insane. He is going to kill me. I can't let him steal the color from this. It's all I have. Please. Hesitance gripped me by the throat, and I opened my mouth to speak. Nothing came out. Eve stared me down, and her empty eyes were suddenly not empty anymore. They weren't lifeless. Instead, they seemed brighter, filled with life, with hope. I had never seen this side of Evelyn Barrett before. I stuttered. Nothing is going to happen to you, Eve. You don't need this card. But as I said these words, even I heard the doubt within my voice. I felt that I would regret keeping the card. Perhaps if I gave Eve the card to borrow, she would feel more at ease. Perhaps this card was the key to break through into Eve's mind. Perhaps she wasn't so far gone. Reluctantly, I backed away from the girl. Just keep it for now. That's fine, I sighed. Eve's eyes sparkled, and a hint of a smile pricked at her lips. She looked normal, as though she didn't live in a sanitarium. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, she repeated hastily. Just return it to me when you no longer need it. Of course. Eve's mannerism was completely different than it had been when she first arrived. As she continued inspecting the card in awe, I couldn't help but smile. Perhaps I could help her. Perhaps the Eve that I was not quite fond of was fading, and a new girl was coming to light. Either way, I felt the start of something new. Hope. The next day, I was scheduled to check up on Eve. The feeling of apprehension that usually sat in the pit of my stomach was gone. Ever since our session yesterday, I had faith that my patient was healing, truly healing. I walked with optimism, hopeful that my relationship with Eve was growing stronger. One of the best feelings as a therapist was knowing that you were of aid to your patient, that you were able to dig them out of a great hole. It felt rewarding, fulfilling. I approached Eve's door and knocked gently so as not to startle her. Though she was in the process of healing, she was still fragile. I waited for a few seconds before knocking again. Eve did not respond, and I heard no noise from inside the room. The queasy feeling in my stomach returned. I knocked louder. No response. To accompany my uneasiness, an alarm resonated through my skull. Something was wrong. Skeptically, I pushed open the door and took a quick glance around the room. It didn't take long for me to spot her. Eve. She was sprawled out on the ground, unconscious. Without hesitation, I crouched on the floor next to her, shaking her shoulder. "Eve? Eve?" I blurted. There was no response. She didn't move. "No, Eve. Wake up." My chest felt light as I reached for Eve's delicate wrist. There was no pulse. In fact, her skin was a block of ice. "Oh my God, Eve." Numbly, my eyes trailed over towards her hand. Her fingers limply held a little slip of paper with a rainbow on it. The card that my daughter made. The next few moments were a blur. My body began moving on its own, while my mind remained stuck on the image of Eve's body on the floor. Her still, pale body. As I unconsciously grabbed the card out of Eve's limp hand and shoved it in my pocket, I heard muffled voices entering the bedroom, scrambling around me, asking me what had happened. I didn't process the question, couldn't process it. All of my senses were honed in on Eve, on the fact that she was dead. Nurses surrounded Eve and I, and before I knew it, I was laying on the ground too, losing consciousness. I felt as though I was floating in outer space, and it became a struggle to breathe. My vision was fading into a deep darkness, and everyone near me was fading. The nurses, Eve, everything was fading. I was grasping onto nothing. But no, something was still there, hidden in the corner of my periphery. Though it blended within the darkness overtaking my mind, it wasn't completely hidden. I saw it. Him, though hardly visible. I was still able to make out the silhouette of a large man standing in the corner of the room. He hardly looked like a man at all, really. As far as I could tell, he had no hair, no face. He looked like an apparition by the way he blended into the wall behind him. He was the absence of everything, a void where light should have been. It was impossible to make out the distinct features of the man, but even with a blurry glimpse, I knew that the man was something of a sinister entity. Evil. As I blacked out, two words repeatedly rang in my head. They reverberated deeply, their consonants sounding of menacing death knells. It was all I heard as I lost consciousness. Shadow man, shadow man, shadow man. I woke up with a start on the couch in my office. My thoughts immediately trailed to what I last could remember. They trailed to Eve. She had died. Was that all a dream? What if it wasn't? What was the cause of her death? She was healthy, physically at least. Nothing made sense. The shadowed silhouette grazed my thoughts, and a chill fell over my body. I must have been imagining the man. I had not been in the right state of mind, nearly on the brink of passing out. It was an illusion. It had to be. So why was it that Eve had also been hallucinating a shadow man? A lump in my pocket alerted my senses, and I reached for whatever was inside. My fingers lifted out a piece of crinkled paper, scrunched up in a ball. The card. It was ruined, shoved in my pocket like a piece of trash. As my eyes welled up with tears, I unfolded the paper and examined the rainbow on the front. I blinked multiple times and wiped away the tears from my eyes. Something wasn't right. My vision was playing games with me. As I stared at the card, at the sloppy rainbow on the front, my heart dropped as I realized something. Eve wasn't crazy. The rainbow on the front of the card was no longer drawn in colorful crayon. It was purely black and white. When the world went gray prologue. Joy, happiness, life, creation, the spark of beginning, the heartbeat of Earth itself, the endless manifestation of color and beauty and light, blossoming, growing, unfurling into something infinite. And then, one day, nothing. The world, once bursting with radiance, was swallowed whole, devoured by an oblivion so complete that even memory faded to grayscale, leaving behind only the cruel, inescapable taunt of black and white, a silent mockery of what once was, shadows of what had been clung to the charred land beyond our shelter, reaching with desperate fingers toward a sky that had long since turned its back. And as the relentless nothingness took and took and took, we were left only to bear witness to suffer in the empty remains of what we had destroyed. And as the world faded to monochrome, I became one of the countless shades of despair. Our city, once flooded with bustling citizens driving cars of every color, is reduced skeletal frames of buildings and cracked roads. A cruel reminder of the countless nights I spent, sleepless, hidden away in my attic, thriving off the colors coating my paint palette. The word around us hasn't just been burned. It's been erased. The vibrancy stripped away. I look around our underground shelter, and for people struggling to survive, everyone was perfectly content with making conversation from the concrete where they sat, as if they weren't on their deathbeds. We scrape by with the rations the leaders distribute weekly, our bodies weakened by hunger, our minds fractured by the unbearable monotony of a world without color. But it isn't the hunger or paranoia that haunts us, but the weight of absence, the memories of color fading with each passing, dissolving to add to the torture of the ash flakes contaminating the air. Black, white, gray, repeat, every damn time. And then I find myself thinking the same, though I thought, since the day the world was drained of color. This is a dream. Colors can't just disappear. And yet, here we were in this mere sketch of what was a vast land that stretched on through the remains of the nuclear tragedy, colored in shades of ash and bone, where nothing grows and nothing dares to blossom. For now, I resort to my only escape, my eyelids suddenly feeling too heavy, my mind too weary. Symptoms we've long since accepted as the norm, and allow myself to relax against the concrete wall. Part 1. Rations are low. Too low. A small group of us was sent into the depths of our despair to scrounge together enough food to ensure our, at the least, survival. Survival doesn't always grace the entirety of our measly society, and it's unfortunate. But death, even at 17, is not an unfamiliar fate. I look out into the rubble, finally lifting my eyes from my sneakered feet for the first time since they stepped beyond the shelter's entrance. The land is silent. The only sound, the crunching of boots landing against who knows what, and the whipping wind nipped at my skin, scattering my once auburn-streaked hair across the back of my jacket. Black, white, gray, rep. A gleam catches my eye. We're at the edge of the ruins. That's impossible. My feet are already betraying me, already venturing closer to this foreign feeling of freedom. 5 years ago was the last time I was graced with the presence of color. 5 years since the bombs. 5 years since this world was diminished to a mere grayscale. 5 years. For color to still exist would be out of the question. I track the glistening spark of hope, forcing my eyes to stay open, forcing my feet one in front of the other, until, where'd it go? I blink. Scanning the scene, my eyes dart frantically from each piece of Colorly's scrap to the next. Come on. Come on. Come, nothing. The unmistakable feeling of wilted grass prickles at my knees as they hit the ground where it was. The hope of color in an achromatic world slipped through my hoary fingers like sand slipping through the grasp of the ocean's spray continuously. Elara? Sienna, one of the other young scavengers asked, kneeling down in front of me. You okay? I blink back tears I didn't know were welling, forcing composure I don't have, even as I feel the feather-light touch of Sienna's hand on my shoulder. I know I can tell Sienna the truth. She did take me in after the bombs killed my parents, but to burden her would be to break myself in the process. Yeah, my voice is breathy, as if I'm questioning my own answer, while letting the first one that comes to mind slip past my lips. If anyone is going to believe me, it's going to be her. She is the only family I have left, after all. I thought I saw color. Sienna's muted, but still striking. Once blue eyes go wide, clawing to clench onto the sliver of hope and clinging onto it like a lifeline. Anything, everything. She leans closer, the shoulder-length, ashy hue filling her head, now slipping past her ear. If anyone can find it, it's you. She said it like it was the easiest thing in the world. But that was just the way Sienna made everything seem. Easy. Like it wasn't the sight reignites a desperate hope, a longing to believe that life in its fullest form is not truly gone. Part 2. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. I can't unsee it. I know it's risky. I know there are people here who need every last bit of help they can get. But if there's a better, beautifully vivid world out there, inching to be found, it needs to be found. So here I am, in the thick, inky embrace of the dead of night, my fingers curling tightly around the worn, chilled rungs of the ladder that stretches upward like a fragile, rust-bitten bridge to a world I have long since sworn, with every fiber of my being, to unravel, to tear apart piece by piece, if that's what it takes, all in pursuit of that elusive, flickering glint, something small, something distant, something that once dared to catch and hold the fleeting light of a bleached and weary sun. Because if there is one truth I refuse to let slip through the cracks of time, it is that color, in all its wild, untamed brilliance is not just an indulgence, not merely an ornament to be admired from afar, but a necessity, a lifeblood that the world not only craves, but deserves to be drenched in, to be wholly consumed by. And if it is within my grasp to bring it back, to pry it from the hands of whatever force dares to smother it, then I will chase it, seize it, and deliver it without hesitation, no matter the cost. Singed, sealed, delivered. Address: a monochrome world once called Earth, surrounded by rubble. I step out into the spotted sky and let the chill of a rare wind smack me right in the face. A stark contrast to the warmth seeping across my chest. I shake my head at myself and how I utterly disregarded the warnings of the other survivors and so effortlessly snuck out of the security of our shelter into the wasteland so eagerly. I glance around the land stretched out before me, waste crowding the ground and ashes polluting the air. And I swear the hues of gray, now illuminated by stars and a moon, that appeared as dots and a waning semicircle, were darker than black, everything meshing with the ink-stained sky. I will find it. I'll find it, if it kills me. I will. Then, just beyond the endless stretch of night, a shimmer, the faintest trace of warmth against the cold monotony. It's real, I murmur, though no one is around to overhear. It has to be. Part 3. I walk for hours, and it still feels like I've gone nowhere. I'm still surrounded by the gray void, still surrounded by remains of a better life, and still with the shimmering speck of hope before me, not stopping. The landscape is an endless graveyard of the past. Twisted steel, collapsed buildings, and roads that crack beneath my feet stretch on like the bones of a forgotten civilization. Everything is still. No birds cry overhead. No wind whispers through trees. Because there are no trees left to whisper through. The silence is heavy, pressing against me like the weight of the sky itself. I huff, pressing my back against a crumbling door, not bothering to look at the house, but rather the swing set across the road, peering intently as it swings back and forth in the stillness of night, moved by something unseen. Perhaps the ghost of the child who cherished it. A sigh slips past my lips at the tempting offer of sleep, but refusing to give in quiet yet, I push my weight forward. My feet drag, weighing me down. Black, white, great repeat. It's infuriating that I can't close the distance between me and my last hope of color. My eyes snag on a reflection in the road. My pace quickens. My footfalls echo in the empty, colorless world as I near the glinting surface. A mirror, cracked, dirt-speckled, abandoned in the middle of the road, like it doesn't belong. Like nothing belongs, I slow, breathing hard. My reflection stares back at me, distorted by the fractures spider-webbing across the glass. The same dull world is behind me, the same lifeless sky above. But beneath me, just beyond the cracks, something else, green, my breath catches. A patch of grass, impossibly vivid, bleeding through the reflection, as if it exists in another world, as if it's real, somewhere, somehow. I step forward, heart pounding, kneeling at the mirror's edge. My fingers hover over the glass. The colors look too bright, too alive, like they'd burn if I touched them. But I don't hesitate. I kick the mirror. It shatters under my heel with a sharp, crystalline crack. Splinters of glass scatter across the road, glinting like stars in the empty light. I brace myself for something, anything, a shift in the air, a tremor in the ground, a door opening where there was none before. But when I look down, the green is gone, just shards of broken glass, catching the darkened sky in their edges. Just my own reflection, fractured into 100 jagged pieces. I lurch forward, scraping at the road where the mirror used to be. Nothing. No hidden portal. No sliver of color left behind. My hands shake. Tears, clear wetness, drip down my cheeks in slowed fashion. My breathing comes in clipped gasps. I saw it. I know I did. The wind stirs, sending a few stray fragments skittering away. I watch them disappear down the road, swallowed by the nothingness stretching endlessly ahead. And then I keep walking, pushing harder, further, relentless. Part 4. I refuse to let myself stop. I won't. I can't. Not if I want any chance at finding the color I've recklessly craved. My eyes follow the path I left in the dust, the sun rising higher in the sky. And then, thunk, the ground hits me before I can brace for it. Pain shoots through my skull in sharp, electric volts. I glance up, dazed, and see the thick trunk of the tree I just slammed into, its rough bark pressing into my chest, pinning me to the earth. I wince, trying to push myself up, but my head swims with dizziness. The tree stands tall, towering over me like an ancient sentinel, its branches casting long shadows in the early morning light. I can feel its strength, as if it's mocking my weakness, daring me to rise again. I press my palms to the ground, leaves crunching beneath them, and accept this tree's challenge. The rough earth presses against my skin, grounding me in this moment, daring me to rise. A chill runs through my spine as I push myself up, dirt clinging to my fingertips. The air is thick, damp, charged with something unseen, but undeniable, prepared to confront the tree. I stand to my feet and ball my fists, the tension in my body coiling like a spring. I'm ready. My knuckles tighten, breath steadying, until a sharp, almost imperceptible sting pricks at my palm. Crunch. My hand flattens instinctively, fingers twitching as I feel the sensation spread. The leaves, crisp and brittle, stick to my skin like they belong there. A brief annoyance flickers through me, and I almost brush them off without a second thought, until something stops me cold. The color, not gray, not black, not the dry, lifeless husks of darkness. These leaves are green. It's faint, fading, dying, but it's there. The realization steals the breath from my lungs. Green here, among the decay. Color still exists, but it is fading. The world is not truly black and white. It is dying in slow motion. The nuclear bombs did not erase color. It severed life's connection to it, leaving only those who remember it to witness its vanishing. A smirk, one I haven't worn since the day of the bombs, breaks across my lips. It all makes sense. I have to find the color. I have to find the... What about everyone else? What about Sienna? I cut myself off, bending to gather a handful of dull leaves from the ground. Sienna would want this. If anyone can find it, it's you. My grip on the leaves tightens, as if I can hold on to her words. Onto her, for guidance, like I always have. And I intend to do just that. One step. For hope. Another. For faith. 2 steps. For a new life. Another. For Sienna. And then I'm sprinting, not daring to look back. Finn, the painted door, for what feels like an eternity. I stare at the bloodied body without being able to move. It's sprawled at my feet, limbs flung wide open, limp, each arm and leg pointing in a different direction on the filthy cobblestone ground of the tiny, walled, dark, and abandoned courtyard. Above us, the moonlight and the sparks of stars flicker behind white clouds that slice through a deep blue sky, like ghost ships crossing distant, uncharted seas. The layers of mythical creatures and fearsome leviathans. With my free hand, I grope blindly at my own stomach, applying pressure to the wounds, the deep cuts that tore through flesh and muscles during the fight. Warm, dark blood gushes between my fingers, trickling down my arm, soaking the inner sleeve of my shirt and jacket. A lantern shines through the fogged glass of a 3rd-floor window in the adjacent building. I run and hide, crouching behind a bush. Clenching my teeth, I stifle a groan. "Who's there?" demands the gruff, weathered voice of an old man. Through the tangle of leaves, cloaked in shadows, I watch him, He wears a long, white cotton nightgown and a matching cap. One hand holds the open window, while the other grips the lit lantern. He squints and scans the courtyard, fixing his gaze on the body. Hey, you degenerate drunkard. Go die somewhere else, Satan. Shoo, shoo. He yells like this for a minute or two, then grunts, mutters a curse, shuts the window, and disappears along with the light inside the room. I lift my head and look around, peering through one of the gaps in the ancient stone wall into the street. Seeing no one, I seize the opportunity to leave the scene. I rise, pull myself over the wall, and slip into the narrow, winding cobblestone streets. I try to move quickly, but quietly. I fail at both. The wound slows me down, saps my strength, the precision of my movements, and wherever I pass, I catch the attention of horses tied to posts or hitched to carriages, and dogs guarding gardens and courtyards. The former neigh and snort, the latter bark, bare their teeth, and growl behind fences, stone walls, or the iron bars of gates. The streets are deserted, except for the animals, silent save for their sounds, the gusts of wind, the rustling of leaves, the creak of hinges on lonely shop, and tavern signs swaying in the dim light. Of the lanterns hanging from sparsely spaced posts along the paths, only a few remain lit. I regret coming on foot, but at the same time, I know I had no choice. I couldn't risk having the coachman as a witness, and driving my own carriage alone would have raised too many suspicions. A rider draws far more attention than a man on foot. A man can move unnoticed, can hide at the first sign of danger, can leap over walls and slip through courtyards unseen, can climb walls and travel across rooftops. After a while, I stop feeling my legs, stop perceiving their movement. Despite my thick, fine clothes, I feel a terrible cold creeping up my spine, stabbing beneath my ribs, filling my chest and guts with dread. I collapse on my knees beside a wall and sit with my back against it in a dark alley, sheltered by shadows, trash, and foul smells. Just a minute, I think. I only need a minute if I allow myself 1 or 100. I can't say. But I wake startled when the clamor of sirens and bells reaches my ears. I've been discovered. They're after me. I bury the fingers of my free hand in the crevices of the wall, between the stones, and pull myself back onto my feet. I resume dragging myself forward, attempting to run. I stagger in zigzags, stumble and nearly fall, collide with posts, carriages, empty stakes, and walls, yet press on, one street at a time and one turn at a time, choosing the most crooked and darkest paths, cutting through back alleys, narrow lanes, and forgotten open courtyards. The dreadful symphony of the pursuit never seems far, but also doesn't gain on me as much as I fear. It follows me closely, always keeping the same distance, as if it were holding back for now. It is a macabre, inhuman sound, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I am about to turn a corner when I see the light, unlike any other I have ever encountered. It is not yellow or orange like the light of fire or lanterns. It is white, pulsating, alive, like sunlight itself. I stop, leaning against the wall of a building, mesmerized. The light crawls over the cobblestones like a living thing, formless and boundless. As it approaches, the colors of the lanterns, the animals, the stones, the ground, the walls, everything it is about to touch, fade away. It is as if the light is absorbing these colors, transforming objects into pencil sketches on white paper, like the ones I make before transferring my drawings in color to the canvases that I exchange for prestige, privilege, and fortune. Then the light swallows them, sucks up the colorless drafts as well, consumes them as if it were an immense, infinite mouth. The mouth of God, reclaiming into cosmic oblivion the living and the dead of this world. Behind the blinding curtain, the world disappears, ceasing to exist in a way that defies both physics and human intellect. Slowly, the light moves forward, a white void, smooth and shapeless, transforming what once was into nothingness. It is at that moment that the bells and sirens grow louder and closer, unbearably near. I look around and then start running again. I cross the intersection, with the light devouring the finite world to my right, and follow the street perpendicular to its advance. In a desperate attempt to lose my pursuers, I turn corners at random, sometimes left, sometimes right, zigzagging northward. My twists and turns are not always aimless. At times, I am forced to turn here and there, or backtrack when the wall of light appears just a few steps ahead of me, burning my eyes and rushing to envelop me. I shield my face behind my free hand and dive into the first available path to the right or left, or pivot on my heels and retrace my steps to the previous crossroads. Thus, I conquer the paved streets and the dirt roads, crossing the mile-long stretch that separates the town from my private hill and the mansion crowning it. I pass through the garden gates and rush to the front door. The guards and other staff still awake at this hour are startled, surrounding me, offering to help me walk, to carry me to a bed, a chair, They inquire about my injury, whether they should send a rider to fetch the physician from the village. I command them all to step back, to leave me alone, ordering that every door and window be sealed. For a brief moment, I work alongside them in this endeavor, but then I turn and make my way down the corridors to the bedroom. I kneel by the side of the massive canopy bed and touch Maria's warm face as she sleeps in peace and oblivion, undisturbed by the banging of doors, the shouted exchange of orders, or the music threatening to unravel my perfect world. The clamor of that million-strong chorus of sirens and bells. Gently, I wake her and help her to her feet. Quickly, my love, come with me. You must come with me, I whisper urgently, pulling her by the hand. She follows, trembling, crying, asking about all that blood, about the injuries, and the blood, the blood, the blood. So it was all over, then. Had I won? Were we finally free to live our love, no longer bound by escapes, lies, persecutions, or consequences? I pull her by the hand through the corridors to my studio. Along the way, I grab one of the lanterns hanging from rings fixed to the stone walls. I enter, pull her inside, and lock the door behind us. Frantically, I fly from one side of the room to the other, ensuring all other entrances and windows are shut as well. I move unsteadily, stumbling, pushing aside finished paintings, knocking over empty easels, unfinished canvases, and tables cluttered with papers, palettes, jars of paint, and brushes. Once convinced that every possible entry is sealed, I return to Maria, grasping her hand again, and lead her toward one of the walls. I scour the floor for a brush and a jar of paint. When I open the first jar, I find inside a solid, useless, gray lump. I hurry around the room, gathering more jars, only to find them equally futile. I try using the paint from the palettes, attempting to make it at least pliable with saliva, but to no avail. I find myself clutching a dry, useless brush, turning helplessly in place, sobbing, groaning in pain. Then I remember the wound, the blood. I return to the wall, grip, trembling, inconsolable and bewildered Maria's hand. Dip the brush into my own wound, pulling it out with bristles drenched in blood, dripping red. Together, we approach the wall, and I begin to work. The bells and sirens grow ever closer, unbearably close, now just outside the corridor, sounding in neighboring rooms. With desperate and vigorous strokes, I paint a door, a doorknob, our only escape route. In my mind, I paint on the other side the perfect world, the perfect life, the happy ending we deserve. I squeeze Maria's hand a little tighter. I let the brush slip from my sticky, blood-soaked fingers, falling with a muffled thud beneath the cacophony of sirens and bells. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. With my free hand, I reach toward the doorknob and grasp. Nothing. No, 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 this can't be. I open my eyes and try again. This time, keeping them wide open. Around us, the bells and sirens engulf the world, drowning out every other sound and voice. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. I look around, over my shoulder. From every corner of the studio, through the cracks in the windows and doors, the white, deadly light, that devouring force, seeps into the room. It stretches through gaps between boards and under the passages, swallowing colors, easels, brushes, canvases, and loose sheets of paper. I turn to Maria for one last embrace, but there is no time to know if the movement is completed or if the light is faster, extinguishing us before our farewell can come to fruition. I wake up with my head pounding, the bells and sirens exploding within my temples, and then the music begins to make sense. It sounds familiar, and I realize it is not composed of actual bells or sirens. Blindly, I stretch my arm to the side, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand, and turn off the alarm. I squint at the blinding white light of the sun streaming through the window of my small room, at the foot of my bed. Instinctively, still shrouded in the fog of dreams, I touch my stomach, searching for wounds, only to find it unscathed. Afterward, I get up, wait for the occupant of room 23 to finish their shower, take mine, get dressed, fill my travel mug with coffee in the kitchen on the ground floor of the pension, and rush to the bus stop a block away. Exactly at 7:45 a.m., I knock on the side door of the cafe where I work, located in the food court on the second floor of the Central Mall. William, the grumpy and bald manager, lets me in with a scowl and a grunt. I promptly put on my apron over my uniform, wear my cap, and take up my position. By 8:00 a.m., we are open and running full steam. At 8:17 a.m., Maria arrives. My sweet, small, slender, blonde, and gentle Maria with blue eyes. It's Thursday, and as usual, she is accompanied by her husband. He looks different in 21st century clothes, free of blood, with both eyes intact and without fatal gashes across his neck. They hold hands as they stand in line. At 8:22 a.m., they are in front of me, smiling and politely placing their order. While they speak and smile, and I absent-mindedly jot down their requests, I see through the space between their bodies and heads, across the food court, into the art studio on the other side. At once, even from that distance, my eyes find the painting that captivated me 3 days ago. among the dozens of canvases and easels displayed in the windows. A couple holding hands before a door painted on a wall. The man, clearly a celebrated artist from the 18th or 19th century, still clutching a brush wet with paint. And the door. That door. Ah, that door. And that freedom. And that door. And suddenly, they could go anywhere they wanted to, could love each other and be happy wherever they pleased, as much as their hearts desired, in any place they chose, and nothing else could follow them. Not through that door. Nothing beyond them would be able to cross it. Certainly, nothing bad or evil. I finish jotting down their order. We exchange pleasantries, and the couple turns their back on me. Maria turns her back on me, taking a seat at one of the tables with her husband. The two share a brief kiss, a tender smile. Clearing my throat, I call out in a loud and steady voice, "Next!" And the line moves, and life goes on around here. The hunger, it happened overnight. One evening, the whole world was bathed in the rich hues of a setting sun, the sky painted in oranges and purples. The next morning, everything had turned gray. Not just dull or faded, color itself was gone. The trees, flowers, ocean, even people's skin and eyes had become mere variations of black, white, and gray. It was if reality had been drained, leaving behind a lifeless, monochrome wasteland. At first, scientists tried to explain it as some anomaly in human vision, a mass hallucination, an unknown pollutant in the air. But when they dissected plants and animals, their tissues were colorless at a molecular level. Screens, paintings, dyes, nothing could produce a single shade beyond the grayscale spectrum. Then, people started disappearing. It wasn't like normal vanishing. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away. One moment someone was there, and the next, gone, like they had been erased from existence. The only thing left behind was a faint, smudged shadow on the ground, as though they had begun to dissolve before vanishing entirely. Escher had been watching it happen for weeks. He kept a notebook where he marked every missing person in his town, tracking patterns, trying to make sense of it all. At first, the patterns were unclear, just a slow trickle of missing people. The painters, the poets, the dreamers, those who had dared to whisper about color, to grieve its absence, were the first to go. Then, it was the children who still dreamed in color, their small voices describing the impossible. A sky that wasn't gray, a sun that burned gold. Each one disappeared without a sound, leaving behind nothing but that eerie, smudged shadow. Now, Escher could feel it watching him, lingering just at the edge of his vision, a weight in the air that pressed against his skull, cold fingers at the nape of his neck. The more he thought about color, the stronger it became, like a slow, suffocating whisper wrapping around his mind. He had a theory, but it curdled in his stomach like rot. What if whatever took the color away was still here? And what if it didn't want anyone to remember what had been lost? Escher kept his theory to himself. He had seen too many people vanish after speaking too freely. But in the quiet of his apartment, under a single flickering bulb, he scrawled his thoughts into his notebook, pressing the pencil so hard against the paper that the tip snapped. That night, sleep came in restless waves. Dreams of golden sunrise, of green forests and sapphire oceans, flickered behind his closed eyelids. Something else lurked there too, a whispering void pressing at the edges of his vision, a presence that noticed him. He woke with a start, heart pounding. The bulb above him flickered more erratically now, casting sharp, jumping shadows across the walls. Then he saw it, a smudge, one of those gray stains on the floor near his desk. It hadn't been there before. It looked like the others, the ones left behind by the vanished. But he was still here. Escher reached out a shaking hand, brushing his fingers over the smudge. Ice shot up his arm. His breath hitched, his vision wavered, and for a split second, he saw something, a figure, a shifting mass of darkness standing in the corner of his room, featureless, faceless, but watching him, waiting. The moment passed, and he yanked his hand away. The thing was gone, but he knew it had been real. He flipped open his notebook with trembling fingers. If he was right, he had limited time before it came for him. He needed answers. Somewhere out there, someone knew the truth. Someone who was still alive. Escher didn't sleep again that night. He sat at his desk, staring at the smudge on his floor, waiting for it to move. It didn't, but something else did. A creak in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, his breath hitched. He lived alone. The sound came again, closer this time. A dragging shuffle, like bare feet sliding across wooden floors. Escher reached for the nearest object, a rusted letter opener. Pathetic, but it was something. He moved toward the door, silent, his pulse slamming against his ribs. He pressed his ear against the wood. Nothing. Then a whisper. Not words, just a sound. Something wrong, like wind whistling through hollow bones. Escher yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, but the walls weren't. Long, Uneven handprints streaked the wallpaper, dragging downward, as if something had clawed its way along. The air was thick, pressing, like he had stepped into a vacuum where sound and light had begun to fold in on themselves. Then he noticed the door at the end of the hall. Apartment 203. No one had lived there for months, but now it was open. A sliver of darkness yawned beyond the threshold, impossibly black, deeper than shadow. Something was inside, watching, waiting. Fingers slowly emerged from the darkness, wrapping around the edge of the door, not quite human. Too long, too thin, curling around the edge of the door. The skin wasn't just gray. It was wrong, shifting like static, like it wasn't fully real. The fingers twitched. Escher bolted. He didn't stop until he was outside, breath steaming in the cold air. The city was dead silent, buildings looming in their gray-scale monotony. But something had changed. The streetlights flickered, and for the first time since the color vanished, Escher saw something new. In the distance, above the rooftops, high in the night sky, a single, pulsing red light, the first color he had seen in weeks. And deep in his gut, Escher knew. It was calling to him. He had two choices: run the other way and pretend he never saw the red light, or go to it. Every survival instinct screamed for the first option, but something deep inside, something primal, pulled him toward the second. It was the first color in a world that had been stripped bare. It was wrong, unnatural, but it was something. His feet were already moving. The city was eerily empty. Cars abandoned at intersections, their windshields coated in dust. Storefronts remained open, shelves half-stocked, as if people had simply walked away from their lives. The red light pulsed, steady and slow, coming from the tallest building in the city, the old communications tower. As Escher approached, he felt it before he heard it. A deep, low hum. Subsonic, just beneath the range of hearing, but strong enough to feel in his bones. The street lights flickered in time with it. A shadow moved up ahead. Escher froze. A figure stood in the middle of the street, facing away. Motionless, the man, or what had been a man, wore a tattered suit. Its fabric faded to gray like everything else. Something was wrong with him. His arms hung too long at his sides, limp and lifeless. His head titled slightly, as if listening to something Escher couldn't hear. And then, slowly, the man's neck snapped back, bending at an impossible angle. His face. Escher sucked in a deep breath. The man's eyes were gone. Just smooth, gray skin where they should have been. His mouth hung open in a silent, gaping O, like something had hollowed him out from the inside. And then, without moving his lips, a whisper slid from his throat. "You shouldn't see the color." Escher ran. His breath came in short, sharp gasps, feet pounding the pavement. The communications tower loomed ahead. The hum grew louder. The street lights died. Darkness swallowed everything except for the red glow above, pulsing faster now, more urgent. Something was chasing him. He could hear it, a skittering, impossibly fast, limbs scraping against the pavement. The tower doors were open. Escher threw himself inside and slammed them shut. Silence. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. He took a shaky breath, turning to face the interior. The building was empty. An old stairwell wound up in the dark, leading to the roof. The red glow pulsed from above. There was a voice. Not from behind the door, not the stairwell, but from inside the room. A whisper, slithering through the air like a breath against his ear. You were not supposed to remember, Escher finally realized. The red light hadn't been calling him. It had been warning him. He turned slowly, his breath shallow. The room was empty, but the whisper had been right next to him. The red light pulsed above, faster now. Urgent. He forced himself forward, gripping the stairwell railing. He had to reach the top. He had to see whatever was waiting for him. The climb was endless. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls. His vision swam, his skin prickling, like something unseen was brushing against him. The climb ended at a door, rusty, slightly ajar. Beyond it, the red glow bled into the darkness. Escher pushed it open. He walked out onto the roof. The city stretched out below, dead and colorless. At the center of it all, perched on the tower's antenna, like a grotesque, broken thing, whatever it was not a machine. It was alive, a shifting, writhing mass, its surface pulsing with sickly veins of red light. It had no defined shape, no eyes or mouth, just an undulating, wet mass of twisting tendrils, each one ending in something horrifying. Faces, not full heads, just faces, half-formed, stretched, and distorting, mouths open in silent screams. They flickered in and out of existence, as if trapped. Escher knew, deep in his bones, these were the ones who had vanished. Not erased, not destroyed, absorbed. His stomach twisted, and his knees nearly gave out. The red light flared, and suddenly he remembered. The color hadn't been taken. It had been consumed, and the thing was still hungry. A shadow loomed from behind him. Escher turned just in time to see the eyeless man from the street standing in the doorway. But he was different now. His face was melting, the edges smearing like wet charcoal, his features slipping away. The man took a step forward, then another, and with each step, his body blurred, losing detail, like he was being erased in real time. "Join us," the voices whispered. Escher staggered back. The fleshy mass of faces quivered, responding to the movement, its tendrils stretching toward him. The eyeless man, if he even was a man anymore, took another step forward. His form blurred, warping like wet ink, his face melting away completely. Escher tried to run, but something grabbed his ankle. Ice shot up his leg as a tendril snaked up his calf. It wasn't solid, not exactly. It was like touching static, buzzing, shifting, eating away at him the moment it made contact. A dark gray substance was oozing out of his skin like ink in water. He kicked, thrashed, clawed at the rooftop, but it was pulling him in. More tendrils lashed out, latching onto his arm, his torso, his face, cold, deep, endless. His vision swam. Shadows moved at the edges of his sight. His skin tingled as something deeper than pain rippled through him, like he was being unraveled. The voices rose in a distorted, guttural chorus. "Join us," Escher gasped. And for the briefest moment, he saw everything. Not just the city, not just the rooftop. Beyond. The world before color disappeared, and the thing that had come before that. Something vast, endless, watching, waiting. That fleshy thing of faces wasn't the beginning. It was only a fragment of something much worse. The red light pulsed one final time. Then it went out. Silence. Darkness. A whisper rippling through the void. Now we are free. Colorless heart. Set your story in a world that has lost all color. Colorless Heart by Lucy Apatow. Marie roused from sleep in the double bed inside the Paris Hilton Hotel. She sank into the comfort of the silky sheets and the fresh fabric smell. A smile splashed across her face, unable to open her eyes just yet. Freedom at last. Just her. No one else. No jumping on eggshells. Not being caught off guard. No secrets. No lies. Just Marie. No other soul in this room. Away from him. But it wasn't only about liberation. It was about protection. Keeping her loved ones safe. She had to keep them alive. And this was the only way. Freedom for herself, but separation from her loved ones. But that one person foremost in her brain. Salvatore. Marie had recently attended a gun range and learned how to fire a gun, just in case. She never knew when she might need to use it. It was about protection. The alarm on her mobile phone jerked her fully awake. A yawn filtered through as she slowly opened her eyes and spotted her phone on the dull black bedside table that had been brown yesterday. The white cushions that had been hues of purple, the black curtains that had been taupe, the ash-black carpet beneath the bed that had been gray, and the black sky through a gap in the window curtain that had been blue. No more blue skies, no more shades other than black and white. The world had lost its color. Marie's breath quickened as her heart palpitated. She rose from bed and rubbed her eyes hard. It had to be her eyes. Had she suddenly become colorblind? Where were all the bright, vibrant colors when it was what she needed? She shut, then opened her eyes, but nothing changed. Her world was drab, colorless, soulless. Her shoulders slumped over, her head bowed. A slow chill ran up and down her spine. Curiosity piqued. Her skin reddened and turned hot. She had no choice but to be here in this colorless world. What had happened overnight to turn her entire world into a shroud of darkness with only black and white in its midst? Marie wandered outside the hotel, lost in a world where she knew no one. She had left Melbourne to make a fresh start in Paris so nobody would find her. So he couldn't find her. She couldn't believe having woken up in a with shades of gray and black blocking her view of natural color, light, and even shades of gray. A bench with a view of the River Seine looked inviting as she made her way over, put her bag down, and stared at the calm ripples with a view of the majestic Eiffel Tower, sailing boats anchored in the water, bunched up trees, and riders swinging their arms inside canoes. The wind scraped her face in the winter. Nothing but black and white. Marie flashed back to her former life. Back home where she worked as an interior designer, married to a man she didn't love, and friends who would most likely understand her escape. Yesterday, her world was dark, but today, after she awoke, it became darker, grittier, and scarier. Did this lack of color mean something? Could she no longer design with color to refresh old homes or design new ones if she wanted to start over in France? She had not rung anyone except her best friend Helena about her sudden escape for their own protection. With a call from a burner phone, she announced her safe arrival. "Do you have color? Or has the world changed?" Helena replied. "What are you talking about? The things in the world. They're in black and white, Helena. I woke up this morning and nothing was in color. No blues, browns, pinks, purple, yellows, or any color. All gone. Is Melbourne the same? Don't be silly, Marie. We still have color. Have you become colorblind? Had your eyes checked? You couldn't have become colorblind in an instant. Go get them tested. Oh, and please stay safe. I don't know when I'll call you next. You know how he is. He could be tracking this conversation, even if it's on a burner phone. I love you, Marie, and I'm glad you're safe now. One day, we'll be together again. Marie fought back tears after ending the call. She would miss her loved ones, but she still didn't get what was going on. Was she the crazy one? Or did only Paris lose its color? With a sigh, Marie rose and made her way back to the hotel, knowing she'd have to find herself permanent residence. As she crossed the wide road, a towering man brushed her shoulder. Oh, sorry. He locked eyes with her and walked ahead of her on the other side of the road. His broad shoulders and black eyes made her shudder, stopping in his tracks. I have a message to give you. She angled her head. Who are you? Here, take this, he said. She retrieved the note. He watched her. Who the hell was this guy, and why was he making her nervous? Who are you? I'm just the messenger, lady. Read the note. Who sent you? He inched his way closer. Benny did. Now read the note. No, not again. He found her. Would this bastard ever leave her alone? With a shuddering breath, she unfolded the note, her hands shaking and the back of her neck sweating. Bits of her skin prickled. What was this? She had to be dreaming. As she read the note, her vision blurred, as if the words weren't real. The threat wasn't real. Meet me in front of the Louvre tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp, or someone you love dies. The same old threats again. How did he find me? The man bared his crooked teeth with a smile. He swaggered off into the distance. It wasn't over. It never would be. The next morning, Marie paced her steps towards the Louvre, a queue that was a mile long. She wondered if anyone would ever reach the entrance to the museum. The glass panels of the building distracted her from the enemy she was about to meet. Each step drew her closer to the devil. When would it end? Her breath hitched as she stepped on uneven ground. Razor-sharp pain cutting into her lower back as she fought the gust of frozen wind. She had to free herself. But how? He would always find her, threaten her, obsess over her, and abuse her. She'd been abused for 3 torturous years. Storm clouds brewed when Marie drew closer to the swarms of people. It was almost 9 o'clock, and passers-by stared at her as if she as an alien. Was it obvious she was heading towards her death chamber, to her dreaded foe? A cold caress at the back of her neck made her freeze in her spot. She turned. It was him. Benny. In all his wealthy glamour, the bastard wore a black tie, black buttoned-up suit jacket over a black cashmere jumper with black pleated pants over Italian leather shoes. He smelled rich. "Follow me," he said, as he prodded her towards an unknown destination. They walked in silence as his intermittent glares unnerved her. The squeeze of his arm draped through hers, leaving bruises, but she said nothing. His pinch at the back of her neck made her flinch, but she said nothing. The push and pull of her hair strands made her want to cry out, but she didn't. Hidden pain to display her fake strength. When finally she sat down outside the cafe with its outdoor setting, he ordered hot drinks and croissants. "No one does what you did, and gets away with it." She swallowed, her lip trembling as she stared past him. "Please don't hurt him," he chuckled and threw his head back, his stained white teeth prominent. Flicking a cigarette over an ashtray, he tilted his head. "You're lucky I love you, Marie. If I didn't love you, you'd be dead by now. But you ever try something like this again, and I won't hesitate to slash your throat, feed your decrepit body to the fish in the Seine River. Got that?" She nodded, a black spot clouding her vision. Puffs of smoke floated towards her and made her cough. Not that he cared. He was a narcissist. He retrieved his phone. "Watch this. No, I mean business, Marie. I don't blow damn smoke up my arse." She gripped the phone and saw him, tied up to a chair, gagged, beaten, tortured. 2 black eyes, bruising across his cheek, haggard, frail, head hanging down low as if giving up. "No, don't give up, my love. Never give up." A gasp of air grounded her. Rattling teeth must have made her look scared in front of him. "Is he all right?" He scoffed. "That depends on you. You put 1 foot wrong. Leave me again, and he dies. Only when we're safely back home, he'll be released." The waiter returned with the croissants and hot coffees. "Sorry about the croissants. They're a little overcooked, but these are more their natural yellow." Marie winced. "But those croissants are black, not yellow." He waved a hand. "Don't mind her. She's the constant joker. But no worries. We'll have them as they are." The waiter nodded. "Black, you say?" Benny glared. "Leave us." The waiter walked off with a curious gaze. He turned to her. "What is wrong with you? Can't you see the color of the food?" How could he not see what she was seeing? What was wrong with her? "No, everything is black and white. I don't see color anymore." He laughed. "Are you telling me you don't? You see the brown coffees, the blue ashtray, the beige tablecloth, my red tie, my dashing blue eyes?" Her heart missed a beat as she gritted her teeth. No, I lost sight of color this morning. I woke up like this. Everything is black and white. Interesting, he said. Marie looked past him and spotted the man she'd seen earlier. The one who had given her the note. He was standing by a lamppost, sculling a bottle of beer. Why was he around? He must have been Benny's bodyguard, in case she made a run for it. Marie and Benny stepped inside her hotel room. He pushed her towards the wardrobe. "Start packing. Our flight leaves in a few hours." "Okay, then." She pushed aside her floating tears and steeled herself by pulling out her suitcase from underneath the bed, unzipping it. As if in a surreal world, she pulled clothing off hangers and threw them into the suitcase. She was going back to her prison, away from the love of her life. If only she had been stronger a few years ago when he had framed her ex-boyfriend, Salvatore, for murder. Just so he could be free from prison. She was forced to marry him. Marriage to Benny in exchange for Salvatore's freedom. She had never explained why she'd broken up with him. Had to convince Salvatore she no longer loved him. It had cut her insides, but she had to keep him safe. Salvatore had not given up on her and found ways for them to meet secretly. But Benny always found out about their secret rendezvous. He had put plans in place, made the worst things happen. Benny involved in Salvatore crashing his car, ruining his reputation in business, injuring his friend with a beating by his henchmen, and almost killing him at least twice. Now Salvatore was threatened with death. What more could the creep do? "I'm having a shower," he said. She sat on the bed. How could she go back with him? But she had no choice when Salvatore would die if she didn't. Benny's phone lay on the bedside table. Curious, she picked it up and found his recording. Salvatore was still tied to the chair, still tortured and broken. But wait, something was weird about this video. The actions were the same. His movements repeated in a cycle as if it was on a loop. This wasn't her true love life. This was a fake video. It had to be. Could Salvatore have arranged this? Outsmarted Benny again? She smiled to herself. Now she had a chance to do something. Fight him. Hurt him. But no, she wasn't a violent person and had morals. Nothing like Benny. What could she do? Run away again? But Benny might pursue Salvatore and never stop. He would never stop finding her until his own death. She knew that. So what could she do? She could never reason with a crazy person. A knock on the door made her jolt in her spot. It could be anyone. Her heart racing, she slowly opened the door and flinched when the man from earlier pushed past her. "Where's Benny? What are you doing here?" the man whispered in her ear. "Listen, Salvatore will set you free. Get out of here." She swallowed, her vision blurring. What? The back of her neck sweated as one ear listened in on Benny in the shower. No time to talk. Leave. Now. We'll take care of this. She was right. It was a fake recording. He'd escaped. Where is he? The man swung the gun in his hand, scanning past her. He's closer than you think. Go now. Her heart soared, and a spot of color flashed in her vision, but only fleetingly. It turned black and white again. What in hell is going on here? Benny grasped something from his back pocket. Why are you here? The man shrugged until reaching his side pocket and shooting towards Benny, who shifted to the side, the bullet grazing his cheek. But Benny pulled out his own gun and took aim. The gun hit the man square in the chest. He fell back against the door with a thud. Marie quaked. It was over. No love, no freedom. You will never leave me. Never, Marie. Get that. Nobody will ever take you away from me. Grab your things. Hurry up. He shifted the strange man's body to the bathroom, blood pouring out of him like a tap. When he returned, Benny shoved her aside and flung the remainder of her clothes into the suitcase. Now zip it up and let's leave pronto. He sat on the sofa and scrolled through his phone. A call to one of his stupid thugs. Goosebumps swarmed like insects over her arms as a dull ache at the back of her neck made her queasy. This had to stop, slowly zipping up the baggage. A shuffling sound underneath the bed made her think she was hearing things. But no. She spotted a shoe protruding from the corner as someone glided further to the edge near the bedside table. Salvatore appeared and placed a finger across his lips, hefting a gun. She moved towards Benny, pulled the suitcase off the bed, and retrieved her bag. I'm ready. Salvatore flung himself in the open and approached Benny with an aim of his gun. Put your hands up. Now. Benny flinched. You have a death wish, don't you? You might have got away from my men, but you'll never win this war. I will fight you to the death, Benny. I don't care if I die, so long as Marie goes free. Free from your dungeon. Free from your psychopathic world. You loser. He faced Marie. Go now. I'll take care of this. She shook her head. We fight with our hands. Fight to the death. Benny scoffed. Fine with me. He shoved his pistol inside his back pocket and took a fighting stance while Salvatore did the same. No, please, Salvatore. Just go. I can't be with you. Benny's my husband. I'm going back to Melbourne with him. Please leave. No, Marie, enough is enough. Benny threw the first punch, then another and another, until he went down. He gouged one of Salvatore's eyes and flung his head hard against the carpet. Marie moved. No, Benny, stop. I'll come with you. Please stop. Benny softened, giving Salvatore the chance to pound into Benny with a blow to the kidney and then a swift kick in the leg. Lamps overturned, magazines tumbled in the air, and the coffee table shifted. Benny kicked him on the side of his abdomen, and he keeled over. She had to do something. But what? Benny reached for something in his pants pocket. A flick knife. No. He was going to break the rules. Not on her watch. Salvatore attempted to rise when Benny stepped forward. A smirk plastered over his face. He wandered over to him when the knife swung in the air. Marie reached for his back pocket, pulled out the gun, and aimed. "Stop, or I'll shoot," he scoffed. "You don't have the guts. Don't even know guns." Benny ignored her, about to stab Salvatore in the throat. Marie pulled the trigger and shot him twice in the stomach. The knife fell, and he dropped like a sack of potatoes. Blood seeped onto the carpet, and she watched and waited for the life force to draw out of him. 3 years of hell. 3 years of watching over her shoulder. 3 years of fearing the lives of her loved ones, walking quietly on eggshells. Those days were over as the rotten apple drew his last breath. Salvatore shuffled towards her and hugged her. "I love you, Marie. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from him. You've always protected me." She beamed. "I love you too, Salvatore." She savored the gentle caress of her lover's strong arms around her waist. Her eyes shifted, her surroundings vibrating with color. Nor more colorless world when the world went gray. Joy, happiness, life, creation, the spark of beginning, the heartbeat of earth itself, the endless manifestation of color and beauty and light, blossoming, growing, unfurling into something infinite. And then, one day, nothing. The world, once bursting with radiance, was swallowed whole, devoured by an oblivion so complete that even memory faded to grayscale, leaving behind only the cruel, inescapable taunt of black and white, a silent mockery of what once was, shadows of what had been clung to the charred land beyond our shelter, reaching with desperate fingers toward a sky that had long since turned its back. And as the relentless nothingness took and took and took, we were left only to bear witness, to suffer in the empty remains of what we had destroyed. And as the world faded to monochrome, I became one of the countless shades of despair. Our city, once flooded with bustling citizens driving cars of every color, is reduced skeletal frames of buildings and cracked roads. A cruel reminder of the countless nights I spent, sleepless, hidden away in my attic, thriving off the colors coating my paint palette. The word around us hasn't just been burned, it's been erased. The vibrancy stripped away. I look around our underground shelter, and for people struggling to survive, everyone was perfectly content with making conversation from the concrete where they sat, as if they weren't on their deathbeds. We scrape by with the rations the leaders distribute weekly, our bodies weakened by hunger, our minds fractured by the unbearable monotony of a world without color. But it isn't the hunger or paranoia that haunts us, but the weight of absence, the memories of color fading with each passing, dissolving to add to the torture of the ash flakes contaminating the air. Black, white, gray, repeat, every damn time. And then I find myself thinking the same, though I thought, since the day the world was drained of color. This is a dream. Colors can't just disappear. And yet, here we were in this mere sketch of what was. A vast land that stretched on through the remains of the nuclear tragedy, colored in shades of ash and bone, where nothing grows and nothing dares to blossom. For now, I resort to my only escape, my eyelids suddenly feeling too heavy, my mind too weary. Symptoms we've long since accepted as the norm, and allow myself to relax against the concrete wall. Part 1. Rations are low. Too low. A small group of us was sent into the depths of our despair to scrounge together enough food to ensure our, at the least, survival. Survival doesn't always grace the entirety of our measly society, and it's unfortunate. But death, even at 17, is not an unfamiliar fate. I look out into the rubble, finally lifting my eyes from my sneakered feet for the first time since they stepped beyond the shelter's entrance. The land is silent, the only sound the crunching of boots landing against who knows what, and the whipping wind nipped at my skin, scattering my once auburn-streaked hair across the back of my jacket. Black, white, gray, a gleam catches my eye. We're at the edge of the ruins. That's impossible. My feet are already betraying me, already venturing closer to this foreign feeling of freedom. 5 years ago was the last time I was graced with the presence of color. 5 years since the bombs. 5 years since this world was diminished to a mere grayscale. 5 years. For color to still exist would be out of the question. I track the glistening spar of hope, forcing my eyes to stay open, forcing my feet one in front of the other, until, where'd it go? I blink. Scanning the scene, my eyes dart frantically from each piece of colorless scrap to the next. Come on. Come on. Come. Nothing. The unmistakable feeling of wilted grass prickles at my knees as they hit the ground where it was. The hope of color in an achromatic world slipped through my hoary fingers like sand slipping through the grasp of the ocean spray continuously. "Elara?" Sienna, one of the other young scavengers, asked, kneeling down in front of me. "You okay?" I blink back tears I didn't know were welling, forcing composure I don't have, even as I feel the feather-light touch of Sienna's hand on my shoulder. I know I can tell Sienna the truth. She did take me in after the bombs killed my parents, but to burden her would be to break myself in the process. "Yeah." My voice is breathy, as if I'm questioning my own answer, while letting the first one that comes to mind slip past my lips. If anyone is going to believe me, it's going to be her. She is the only family I have left, after all. I thought I saw color. Sienna's muted, but still striking. Once blue eyes go wide, clawing to clench onto the sliver of hope and clinging onto it like a lifeline. Anything, everything. She leans closer, the shoulder-length ashy hue filling her head, now slipping past her ear. If anyone can find it, it's you. She said it like it was the easiest thing in the world, but that was just the way Sienna made everything seem. Easy. Like it wasn't the sight reignites a desperate hope, a longing to believe that life, in its fullest form, is not truly gone. Part 2. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. I can't unsee it. I know it's risky. I know there are people here who need every last bit of help they can get. But if there's a better, beautifully vivid world out there, inching to be found, it needs to be found. So here I am, in the thick, inky embrace of the dead of night, my fingers curling tightly around the worn, chilled rungs of the ladder that stretches upward like a fragile, rust-bitten bridge to a world I have long since sworn, with every fiber of my being, to unravel, to tear apart piece by piece if that's what it takes, all in pursuit of that elusive, flickering glint, something small, something distant, something that once dared to catch and hold the fleeting light of a bleached and weary sun. Because if there is one truth I refuse to let slip through the cracks of time, it is that color, in all its wild, untamed brilliance, is not just an indulgence, not merely an ornament to be admired from afar, but a necessity, a lifeblood that the world not only craves, but deserves to be drenched in, to be wholly consumed by, and if it is within my grasp to bring it back, to pry it from the hands of whatever force dares to smother it, then I will chase it, seize it, and deliver it without hesitation, no matter the cost. Singed, sealed, delivered. Address: a monochrome world once called Earth. Surrounded by rubble, I step out into the spotted sky and let the chill of a rare wind smack me right in the face. a stark contrast to the warmth seeping across my chest. I shake my head at myself and how I utterly disregarded the warnings of the other survivors, and so effortlessly snuck out of the security of our shelter into the wasteland so eagerly. I glance around the land stretched out before me, waste crowding the ground and ashes polluting the air. And I swear, the hues of gray, now illuminated by stars and a moon, that appeared as dots and a waning semicircle, were darker than black, everything meshing with the ink-stained sky. I will find it. I'll find it if it kills me. I will. Then, just beyond the endless stretch of night, a shimmer, the faintest trace of warmth against the cold monotony. It's real, I murmur, though no one is around to overhear. It has to be. Part 3. I walk for hours, and it still feels like I've gone nowhere. I'm still surrounded by the gray void, still surrounded by remains of a better life, and still with the shimmering speck of hope before me, not stopping. The landscape is an endless graveyard of the past. Twisted steel, collapsed buildings, and roads that crack beneath my feet stretch on like the bones of a forgotten civilization. Everything is still. No birds cry overhead, no wind whispers through trees, because there are no trees left to whisper through. The silence is heavy, pressing against me like the weight of the sky itself. I huff, pressing my back against a crumbling door, not bothering to look at the house, but rather the swing set across the road, peering intently as it swings back and forth in the stillness of night, moved by something unseen, perhaps the ghost of the child who cherished it. A sigh slips past my lips at the tempting offer of sleep, but refusing to give in quiet yet, I push my weight forward. My feet drag, weighing me down. Black, white, gray. Repeat. It's infuriating that I can't close the distance between me and my last hope of color. My eyes snag on a reflection in the road. My pace quickens. My footfalls echo in the empty, colorless world as I near the glinting surface. A mirror, cracked, dirt-speckled, abandoned in the middle of the road, like it doesn't belong. Like nothing belongs. I slow, breathing hard. My reflection stares back at me, distorted by the fractures spider-webbing across the glass. The same dull world is behind me, the same lifeless sky above, but beneath me, just beyond the cracks, something else, green. My breath catches. A patch of grass, impossibly vivid, bleeding through the reflection as if it exists in another world. As if it's real, somewhere, somehow. I step forward, heart pounding, kneeling at the mirror's edge. My fingers hover over the glass. The colors look too bright, too alive, like they'd burn if I touched them. But I don't hesitate. I kick the mirror. It shatters under my heel with a sharp, crystalline crack. Splinters of glass scatter across the road, glinting like stars in the empty light. I brace myself for something, anything. A shift in the air, a tremor in the ground, a door opening where there was none before. But when I look down, the green is gone, just shards of broken glass, catching the darkened sky in their edges. Just my own reflection, fractured into 100 jagged pieces. I lurch forward, scraping at the road where the mirror used to be. Nothing. No hidden portal. No sliver of color left behind. My hands shake. Tears, clear wetness, drip down my cheeks in slowed fashion. My breathing comes in clipped gasps. I saw it. I know I did. The wind stirs, sending a few stray fragments skittering away. I watch them disappear down the road, swallowed by the nothingness stretching endlessly ahead. And then I keep walking, pushing harder, further, relentless. Part 4. I refuse to let myself stop. I won't. I can't. Not if I want any chance at finding the color I've recklessly craved. My eyes follow the path I left in the dust, the sun rising higher in the sky. And then, thunk, the ground hits me before I can brace for it. Pain shoots through my skull in sharp, electric volts. I glance up, dazed, and see the thick trunk of the tree I just slammed into, its rough bark pressing into my chest, pinning me to the earth. I wince, trying to push myself up, but my head swims with dizziness. The tree stands tall, towering over me like an ancient sentinel, its branches casting long shadows in the early morning light. I can feel its strength, as if it's mocking my weakness, daring me to rise again. I press my palms to the ground, leaves crunching beneath them, and accept this tree's challenge. The rough earth presses against my skin, grounding me in this moment, daring me to rise. A chill runs through my spine as I push myself up, dirt clinging to my fingertips. The air is thick, damp, charged with something unseen but undeniable. Prepared to confront the tree, I stand to my feet and ball my fists, the tension in my body coiling like a spring. I'm ready. My knuckles tighten, breath steadying, until a sharp, almost imperceptible sting pricks at my palm. Crunch. My hand flattens instinctively, fingers twitching as I feel the sensation spread. The leaves, crisp and brittle, stick to my skin like they belong there. A brief annoyance flickers through me, and I almost brush them off without a second thought. until something stops me cold. The color, not gray, not black, not the dry, lifeless husks of darkness. These leaves are green. It's faint, fading, dying. But it's there. The realization steals the breath from my lungs. Green here. Among the decay, color still exists, but it is fading. The world is not truly black and white. It is dying in slow motion. The nuclear bombs did not erase color. It severed life's connection to it, leaving only those who remember it to witness its vanishing. A smirk, one I haven't worn since the day of the bombs, breaks across my lips. It all makes sense. I have to find the color. I have to find the, what about everyone else? What about Sienna? I cut myself off, bending to gather a handful of dull leaves from the ground. Sienna would want this. If anyone can find it, it's you. My grip on the leaves tightens, as if I can hold on to her words, onto her, for guidance, like I always have. And I intend to do just that. One step, for hope. Another, for faith. 2 steps, for a new life. Another, for Sienna. And then I'm sprinting, not daring to look back. The chromatic drought. Detective Marcus Sign squinted at the fading landscape through his office window. Another day, another shade of gray, lost to whatever this phenomenon was. The sky no longer held its azure expanse, just a flat, pale ceiling hanging lifelessly above a world growing increasingly two-dimensional. 3 more reports of rivers running dry in the Eastern District, Officer Palmer said, dropping a thin file onto Sane's desk. And the hospitals reporting 17 new cases of what they're calling chromatic dehydration. Sign nodded grimly. The medical examiner had shown him the bodies last week. Skin paper-thin, organs collapsed inward, as if someone had extracted not just the water, but the very substance from them. Their eyes, once spherical, had flattened to perfect circles, staring out from faces that resembled pencil sketches more than human remains. Any pattern to where it's spreading? Sign asked, though he already knew the answer. None that makes sense, Palmer replied. It's jumping between neighborhoods, between people who've never met. The only consistent thing is that once it starts in an area, everything there loses dimension within 72 hours. Sign turned away from the window. His own hands seemed less substantial today, the knuckles less pronounced, the veins no longer raised beneath his skin. He'd taken to pressing his palms against solid objects throughout the day, reassuring himself that he could still feel texture, still interact with a 3-dimensional world. What about the library research? He asked. Palmer's expression darkened. Archives are becoming affected. Books are losing their ink, words disappearing from pages even as people try to read them. This was worse than Sane had feared. Knowledge itself was being drained from the world. The river had been the first to go in Westbrook. Once a vibrant, blue-green artery cutting through the heart of the city, it had faded to a pale, silvery streak before disappearing entirely, leaving only a shallow depression in the ground where water had flowed for centuries. Sign stood in the dry riverbed, feeling the cracked earth beneath his shoes. It didn't feel like drought. There was no sense of moisture having evaporated. Rather, it was as if the concept of river had been partially erased from reality, leaving behind this ghostly impression. Detective Sign, a woman approached him, her white lab coat nearly indistinguishable from the colorless landscape. Dr. Eliza Tanner, the city's leading physicist, had been studying the phenomenon since its first appearance 3 months ago. "The process is accelerating," she said without preamble. "We've been measuring the dimensional collapse, and what took weeks in the beginning is now happening in days." "How long?" Sign asked. "Until complete two-dimensionality? For the entire planet?" She shrugged, the gesture oddly truncated, as if her shoulders couldn't quite complete their full range of motion. "At the current rate? 2 weeks, maybe less." Sign swallowed. "And then what?" "I don't know," Dr. Tanner admitted. "But I found something you should see." The university's rare book collection had been moved to a secure facility once the libraries began to empty. Dr. Tanner led Sign through rows of glass cases containing ancient texts, their pages increasingly blank as the phenomenon progressed. "Most of our oldest manuscripts are already gone," she explained. "But this one is different." She stopped before a small display containing what appeared to be a journal bound in matte black leather. Unlike the other books, whose pages had turned a uniform white, this one's text remained stubbornly visible, though the letters seemed to shift and rearrange themselves whenever Sign tried to focus on them. "It's resisting the effect," Dr. Tanner said. "And more importantly, it appeared in our collection the day the river began to fade. No record of acquisition, no catalog entry. It was simply there." Sign leaned closer. "Can you translate it?" "Portions. It appears to be a record kept by something called the Society of Final Memory. From what I can decipher, they were an ancient order dedicated to preserving knowledge through catastrophic events." "Preserving knowledge? But everything's being erased." Dr. Tanner's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted her glasses. A gesture Sign noticed seemed less three-dimensional than it should have been. "I think they made a mistake," she whispered. "A terrible one." The journal led them to the underground chambers beneath the old cathedral. Sign had never known these catacombs existed, though they appeared to have been built centuries before the church itself. The society maintained outposts throughout the world, Dr. Tanner explained as they descended the narrow stairs, flashlight beams cutting through dust that hung motionless in the air. According to the journal, they believed humanity was cyclical. civilizations rising and falling in patterns, with crucial knowledge lost in each collapse. So they preserved information across these cycles? Sign asked, ducking beneath a low archway. The stone felt wrong beneath his fingers, too smooth, as if the grain and texture were being slowly erased. Yes, but more than that, they developed a method to intentionally reset civilization if they deemed it necessary, a way to erase dangerous knowledge while preserving what they considered essential wisdom. The stairway opened into a vast circular chamber. At its center stood a pedestal holding what appeared to be an obsidian sphere, the only object Soin had seen in weeks that still possessed a sense of depth and dimension. Surrounding it, slumped against the walls and floor, were desiccated bodies, or rather, what remained of them. They resembled paper cutouts more than corpses, flattened and colorless. The last active members of the society, Dr. Tanner murmured. They activated the device, the mnemonic purge, they called it, but something went wrong. Sign approached the sphere cautiously. Unlike everything else in this fading world, it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, a perfect three-dimensional void amid the increasingly two-dimensional reality. The journal says the purge was meant to be selective, Dr. Tanner continued, her voice growing thinner, less substantial. To remove specific knowledge while leaving the fundamental structure of reality intact. But they miscalculated. Instead of erasing dangerous information, they started erasing the fundamental properties of existence, dimension, color, substance, and now it's spreading like a contagion throughout reality. Sign reached toward the sphere, feeling a strange pull. Can it be reversed? The journal wasn't clear, but Dr. Tanner's words cut off abruptly. Sign turned to find her frozen in place, her form suddenly flat against the wall, like a photograph. Her mouth was open in mid-sentence, but no sound emerged. Before his eyes, her image seemed to lose resolution, details blurring until she resembled a rough sketch more than a person. Dr. Tanner! He reached for her, but his hand passed through where her shoulder should have been. She wasn't just flat. She was becoming insubstantial. Sign turned back to the sphere in horror. The loss of dimensionality was accelerating. He could feel it in his own body, his lungs laboring to expand in 3 dimensions when reality only permitted 2. His vision narrowing as his eyeballs flattened into circles. The journal had described the purge as a reset, a way to begin civilization anew. But this wasn't renewal. This was erasure. With the last of his dimensional strength, Sane grasped the obsidian sphere. It burned cold against his palms, the sensation almost nostalgic, a reminder of when touch had depth and texture. If the society had started this, perhaps their tool could end it. The sphere pulsed beneath his touch, and Sane had the distinct sensation of something ancient and aware turning its attention toward him. Not a machine, but an entity, a consciousness that had been waiting, perhaps for centuries, for someone to recognize the terrible mistake. "You understand," a voice whispered directly into his mind. The cycle was corrupted, the purge incomplete. "How do I stop it?" Sane gasped, feeling his vocal cords flattening, his words becoming as thin as paper. The purge cannot be stopped, but it can be completed correctly. The sphere began to glow with an impossible light. Not white, or any color sign could name, but something that suggested all colors at once, dimensions beyond the three he knew. "Choose what remains," the voice commanded. "What essence of your world must survive to build anew?" Sign understood then. The society hadn't intended to destroy reality, but to curate it, to select which elements would survive the transition to the next cycle. Their failure had been one of judgment, not mechanism. As his consciousness expanded into the sphere, Sayin saw the entirety of his fading world. Every person, place, and memory collapsing into flatness. And beyond that, he glimpsed other worlds, other cycles, stretching back through countless iterations of humanity. With his final three-dimensional thought, Sane made his choice. "Hey, Jimmy, you still reading that comic?" Mrs. Abernathy called from behind the drugstore counter. "Those new Detective Sane stories are all black and white now that the war's on. Not much to look at." 12-year-old Jimmy Marshall didn't look up from the final panels of Detective Sane and the Mystery of the Vanishing World. He traced his finger over the stark black and white illustrations. The flattened city, the mysterious sphere, the hero's final choice. "I don't mind, Mrs. Abernathy," he replied. "The story's better than the colors, anyway." He turned to the last page, where Detective Sign stood before a newly dimensional world. Color bleeding back into the edges of the panel as rivers began to flow again and people regained their solid forms. The final caption read, "And so Sign chose to preserve not knowledge or power, but the capacity for dimension itself, the ability to grow, to change, to become more than flat impressions on a finite page." Jimmy closed the comic carefully. Outside the shop window, a military convoy rumbled past, headed for the docks, and then across the Atlantic. The world was at war, resources were scarce, and luxuries like colored ink for comics were among the first casualties on the home front. But as he stepped outside into the April sunshine, Jimmy couldn't help seeing the world a little differently, noticing the subtle depths and dimensions that existed even in the harshest of times, the colors that persisted even when they couldn't be printed on a page. He tucked the comic securely under his arm and headed home, unaware that in his hands he carried one of the last remaining artifacts of a civilization that had faded not once, but countless times before. Each cycle preserved paradoxically within the flat, two-dimensional pages of a story that refused to be forgotten. The black of 3 a.m. My favorite time of the day is 3 a.m. Why? You might ask. Well, the answer is quite simple, but the answer is quite complicated. You'll understand in time. All we have is time, especially at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is for the people, a heaven and a hell that works hand in hand. Most are sleeping by 3 a.m., the normal practice. That's not the true 3 a.m., though, not in the slightest. 3 a.m. is uneasy breathing as you wake from a nightmare, alert and ready for danger, before you realize it cannot cross the planes into reality. It existed, but the silence that 3 a.m. offers you reminds you it is no longer real. It was real, but it's gone. Maybe it'll be back, but not now. Not at 3 a.m. However, for some, it's far too real, far too close, and it's right there. 3 a.m. is there to support them, though, the black filled with cloud from the moon. It makes the lights we use seem so bright, makes every step seem too loud. Yet, it is perfect. 3 a.m. is technology-lit rooms. It's for the gamer who has yet to quit their endeavors, with softly pressed keys and hushed voices. It's for those who the 3 a.m. favors, letting the time wash by as they hope for sleep, reprieve, something. It rarely comes. They hate the 3 a.m. 3 a.m. is for bright white lights of shops that seem amiss in the black of night. The people inside always vary, but not all of them want to be there. Not all of them like that side of 3 a.m. It's filled with soft chatter, or more often, no chatter. A silence that booms, that ticks on by. The people all have reasons for being there. Some can't sleep as a duty to their family, to travel within the black of night, to lessen their family's load. Some can't sleep because of what sleeping means for them, the horror it brings along again and again. Then there are those that brave the 3 a.m. for something go insignificant as money. The cashier, who experiences the full blunt of how slow 3 a.m. can be. The man with a gun, he's the most desperate, but he knows how bad the 3 a.m. can get. The officers, tired, exhausted, but they have a job to do. 3 a.m. is terrifying. It's black, black, black. It's lonely. It's scary. There are things that happen at 3 a.m. in back alleys and bar bathrooms. 3 a.m. teaches you just how horrible the world is, how unmerciful it is. I think 3 a.m. depends on the people. It's made for the people. 3 a.m. is the time where no one judges, where people can be their truest selves, for best Or for worse, 3 a.m. is like the sky, the night sky. It's black, black, black. That is it. It's darkness, and darkness, and it swallows up everything. 3 a.m. is like the sky, bright and full of stars, all so far away. The sky is darkness, 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 but it allows us to see, to truly see what surrounds us. It shows us the stars from so far away, burning and burning away, until you realize that we can only see what the stars once were, a bright light before it burns out. 3 a.m. is for loss, for quiet sobs and silent wailing. It's for time to stop, to let reality hit you head on. 3 a.m. is for selfish, hateful crying over losses you never used to think you had to prepare for. 3 a.m. is for pain, for bubbly and outgoing people to let their feelings take control, to lose the mask they present the world. It's a time for red to meet bathroom tiles. It's a time for young people to fly. It's time for pain. 3 a.m. is pain, and it doesn't know anything else. 3 a.m. is for love, for heart-to-heart chats on top of bridges, or whispered phone calls under blankets. 3 a.m. is for wrapping wounds you shouldn't have made, but knowing they will worry your friend, so hiding them is a priority. 3 a.m. is for promises. A text that says you'll love them forever. A voice message saying it's not their fault, never their fault. Sometimes it's promising them unconditional love, and sometimes it's promising them more time. 3 a.m. is mysterious like that, despite its flaws. I love 3 a.m. I recognize it for what it is. It's a time to rest, to scream, to cry, to mourn. But it's also a time to talk, to connect, to know you aren't alone. 3 a.m. is peaceful. 3 a.m. is awful. It gives, but then it takes. 3 a.m. is where I met you for the first time. On the very bridge I wouldn't leave, I met you. We spoke of 3 a.m. together under the moonlight. We spoke of 3 p.m. as well. 3 p.m. caused your 3 a.m. after all. 3 p.m. was something that took a long time to come for you. But once it was there, you would savor it, even if only for a moment. You spent your days wishing for 3 p.m. Because if 3 a.m. was for life to pass, 3 p.m. was for school to pass. Then you spoke of such unfairnesses that were never righted once 3 p.m. came for you. The aftermath of 3 p.m. We both knew that 3 a.m. was your only reprieve of the day. And yet you decided that 3 a.m. was worth dealing with what surrounded 3 p.m. It wasn't my first 3 a.m., but it was yours. So we talked and talked and talked. I managed to stop your plans. Each night you came, and each night I stopped you. Each night I could stop you. Your 3 p.m. never got any better. I knew that. I knew that. I knew that. Your 3 a.m.s got so regular. We got so regular. Then we got better. Or did we? Was I just imagining that? I saw you smile more. Soft and so vulnerable. You gave me your soul, whispered every secret. And yet, you were my sister, my little baby sister. Not by blood, not by name, but by 3 a.m. whispers. You were blood in ways that mattered. Shared blood-splattering pavements and matching bruises from after our 3 p.m. You were my 3 a.m. You made my 3 p.m. bearable, and I returned the favor as much as I could. Little sister, you were so little. We were far too young. I broke our promise. First. It was selfish, foolish, and absolutely monstrous of me. You weren't there. You didn't need our 3 a.m. I slipped. I'm sorry. So sorry. I knew there would be consequences. When you came to our spot on the abandoned bridge, the next 3 a.m., oh, I tried to hug you, tight as you wailed, pulling you into a cold embrace. It was no use, though, no matter how tight I held you, no matter how much I loved you. I failed you, my dear little sister. You were the only person to find my body, and I, yours. And then the red one enters. A great artist once said, color. What a deep and mysterious language, the language of dreams. Depending on the situation or distraction, this philosophy unquestionably plays an integral part in Herbert Truelove's meandering existence, floating and gliding from one state of contented, colorful contemplation to the next, regardless of the consequences. It is Tuesday. Spring has just about sprung, and a dapple of weak sunlight is finally threatening to break through the clouds that have been in perpetual domination since last October. At least it seems that way to Herb, who, as we speak, is in a daydream of sorts, caught between the grim reality of his humdrum day job and the fantastical scenes that his mind is playing out to him. Today, softly tinted marshmallow cats and dogs with expertly curated mustaches and jaunty little hats are fleeting across his venturing mind. Everything is and hazy around the edges. The sun's faint rays kiss the scene with hues of pale yellow, blue, and pink. And across the dusty blue sky, cloud-like forms are enticing him away to somewhere far beyond the gray walls of reality, where Herb's flesh and bones exist. True love? Shrill and pointed as ever, the bespectacled and suited Geraldine Ledbetter, a storm cloud personified, marches across the office and places herself between the window and Herb's reverie. She casts the darkest kind of shadow across the desk, perhaps the sort you might encounter in a terrible nightmare. Are the figures for the board meeting ready yet? The words thunder reverberating in Herb's ears. But he is not easily fazed. Herb has learned that it is best to do whatever is asked of him. Herb knows that it's wise to keep his head down and complete his work to an adequate standard so that it attracts minimal attention. Herb knows where his mind would rather be. The mustachioed marshmallow cats and dogs saunter away towards the rapidly graying clouds, and Herb, rubbing his eyes, waggles the gray plastic mouse to motion his laptop back into life. "Half an hour," mutters Herb, as he adjusts himself to the reality that surrounds him. The cats and dogs disappearing into the cloudy horizon. His tired eyes flicker across the incomplete spreadsheet that occupies the screen. Conditional formatting highlights the cells that need to be completed in a garish, bright yellow. As Herb knows from bitter experience, the department heads are notoriously tardy in submitting their month-end figures, and this month is no exception. And that will include the projections for the second quarter. The dark outline of Geraldine Ledbetter demands rather than questions. Of course. Around the edge of Geraldine's heavy form, Herb can see a butterfly hovering outside the window, its golden-tipped wings unusually early for the time of year, but splendid all the same as it flutters in the mid-morning light. On my desk by 11 sharp then. Then Geraldine, engulfed within her ominous cloud, rumbles back through the office and is gone. The light resumes its place on Herb's desk, and his pupils contract for a moment. As he refocuses, he watches the butterfly as it continues to dance outside the window, coaxing and tantalizing, almost coquettishly, if a butterfly could assume such a demeanor. "Hey, Herb, look at me." Herb runs his hand over his chin, catching the patch of stubble that he's missed during this morning's shave. The empty yellow cells blink at him. Herb is no fool, of course. He is something of a spreadsheet genius, and all the projections, graphs, and charts will update automatically as soon as he inputs the missing figures. He turns his attention away from the butterfly for a moment and flicks to his emails. Nothing. 5 department heads have still not submitted their figures. Herb detests having to chase them. They make him feel insignificant, as though they have more important things to think about than a few numbers. Numbers that you should bloody well know if you had any clue what you were doing, thinks Herb. The tapping at the window draws his attention away from the screen. The butterfly is still there, and in the distance, pink and blue, marshmallow, cats and doigts with mustaches and jaunty hats are bounding along the treetops. The butterfly poses enigmatically on a small branch that grows out of the old brickwork, stretching and twitching its outstretched wings. Herb is so overwhelmingly compelled by the creature that he moves cautiously round to the other side of the desk and crouches down, the thinning fabric of his trousers straining at the knees as he does so. The glass separates his nose from the butterfly by less than an inch. Over the hills and the meadows, golden yellow with rapeseed and sunflowers, far too early for the time of year, but glorious all the same. The countryside is ablaze with color as Herb and the butterfly soar, dipping and flying over the landscape below, hanging on tightly to its wings, delighting in every swirl and swoop. Herb is surprised to see strange markings on the insect, not usual for this type. In between the clouds, the cats and dogs nod and doff their hats as he passes, and Herb strains his eyes against the wind, fascinated by the butterfly, curious to examine more closely its squiggles and shapes. Back at his desk, Herb recalls the markings, which were in fact numbers. 5 of them etched in fine, flowing lines across the butterfly's wings. He opens the spreadsheet and, compelled by something he knows not, he enters the numbers into the bright yellow cells, which immediately reformat to corporate gray. The bottom line updates, the graphs and charts complete. All is done. But the cell containing the overall projection for the next quarter is now red. This doesn't surprise Herb. The second quarter is always like that. So he prints off copies for the board meeting, slides them onto Geraldine's desk whilst she's in the washroom, and disappears for an early lunch. Outside, the sun has burned away the hazy cloud of earlier, and the day promises to be a little warmer than of late. Herb buys a takeaway sandwich and coffee. Then, in the small memorial garden down the road from the office, he finds an empty bench facing the sun. He sips the coffee, letting the warm, milky substance trickle down his throat and warm his insides, the caffeine tingling through his veins. Herb closes his eyes. Blotches of red, orange, and green fill his vision as the light from the sun leaves its mark. The green shapes begin to move in slow, swirling motions, bumping off the red and orange like a crooked kaleidoscope. Herb recalls holding his eye to the brightly decorated tube, turning the colored beads, reflecting in the mirrors. In the distance, his mother is calling him in from the living room to go through to the kitchen for his dinner. The kaleidoscope falls to the floor, and the green swirls fill his vision as a formation of leaves and petals spin clockwise and then anti-clockwise, alternating, until a purple snake pokes its head through the center of the arrangement. It smiles. It's a pleasant enough smile, though perhaps verging on the sinister, and the corners of Herb's mouth twitch slightly. People passing through the memorial garden give him a wide berth. Herb sips the last of his tepid coffee, eats the ham sandwich, which is now lukewarm, and stretches his legs before heading back inside. As he passes the office window, he checks his reflection. Reasonable enough, if a little worn around the edges, but he notices that his shirt looks an odd color. Herb shakes his head. Just the light, and heads back into the office. Herb's stomach sinks as, returning to his desk, he sees the familiar outline of Geraldine against the window. But as he gets closer, he notices an expression on her face that he's never seen before. Not the usual storm cloud, more like a break in the weather, a lightening of the day. There's a faint flush of color to her cheeks, a softening of her usually harsh and critical eyes. Her blouse, usually a nondescript department store shade of grayish beige, now seems to emit a slight hint of pink, not bright enough to be obvious, but just enough to make Herb look twice. "The board meeting went well," she says. The projections were in line with expectations. "Good work, true love." Herb nods, not sure how to respond. She has never called his work good before. Ever. "I need you to run some modeling," she continues. "Future projections, based on recent trends. A few different scenarios. I want to see what we're looking at for the next couple of years." She turns to leave, then pauses. "By the way," she adds, looking Herb up and down in a way that makes him feel like he's transparent, "I like that shirt on you. You had a dark blue one on before, didn't you?" Herb looks down. His shirt seems pale and washed out, and he's not entirely sure what color it had been earlier, his morning routine being somewhat chaotic. The first shirt out of the wardrobe usually suffices. Herb sits at his desk. For a moment, he glances towards the window, as temptation draws him to contemplate for just a little while. But Geraldine's demeanor has startled him, setting him off balance. For the first time since starting with the firm, he feels compelled to produce what she wants as accurately and as promptly as he can. Herb exhales slowly and turns to the spreadsheet. Numbers and formulas are a place of comfort and security for him, and he begins to plan out the equations and tables of data that he needs. Everything is mapping into the right place. No errors flash, but his mind is slowly drifting. The warmth of the sun still lingers on his face. The coffee tingles in his bloodstream, and Herb's fingers hover over the keys. The marshmallow cats and dogs have returned. Their sugary bodies bound across a soft, undulating pastel landscape, their hats perched askew at gravity-defying angles. Herb watches the beautiful hues of the world around them, gentle like childhood dreams. He smiles as they swirl and leap, admiring their peculiar hats and mustaches. Then there's a flicker, and something deeper in his mind stirs. Herb snaps back to the screen. The formatting is wrong. Purple cells, they hadn't been there before. He hadn't formatted them that way. Herb was sure of that. The empty spaces within them pulse ever so slightly, and Herb's stomach tightens as he recalls the numbers on the golden-tipped butterfly. The snake was purple. He tries to remember the patterns. Had there been numbers? Herb leans back in his chair and closes his eyes, trying to recall, attempting to re-summon the lunchtime dream. The marshmallow creatures appear again, bounding across rolling, gentle pistachio fields, warm, comforting, inviting. But that's not what he needs right now. The snake had been different. It had coiled through a spiral of violet and deep shades of green, its smile knowing, its movements slow and deliberate. Herb pushes deeper into the memory, searching for it, feeling the gentle marshmallow dreams resisting, as if trying to keep him away. Then he finds it. The kaleidoscope returns. "Your dinner's ready, Herbert." But the snake slithers from the swirling pattern of leaves, its scales shimmering in purple hues. And there they are, the numbers, etched in golden ink along its back, shifting and twisting as the creature moves. Herb returns to his desk with a jolt. His fingers move quickly before his waking mind erases what he's just seen. And with shaking hands, he enters the snake's numbers into the spreadsheet. The model updates. The figures align. Herb's heart thumps in his chest. The purple cells have turned gray, but he doesn't know what the new snake-derived data means. But when he prints the pages and places them on Geraldine's desk, she looks at him with something close to admiration. "Interesting," she murmurs. Geraldine chews her freshly painted lips as her eyes move across the sheets. "This changes things. Leave this with me, true love." Then a pause as she adjusts the chain of magenta beads that seem to have appeared around her neck. "Thank you." Later in the week, we find Herb reflecting on the events of the last couple of days. He's continually surprised and a little bewildered at the changes he sees in Geraldine's persona, gaining subtle hints of color in both her wardrobe and her demeanor. With every financial forecast or model that she requests, amidst wild daytime dreams and flickering spreadsheets, Herb delivers the goods. He knows he's making a good impression, but his daytime reveries are changing, showing him things he's never seen before, and he isn't sure how he feels about that. The faded and worn knees of his trousers have thinned further, now nearly transparent, and when he catches his reflection in the washroom mirror, the patchy stubble on his chin seems to be developing a rather gray tinge. Herb's comforting daydreams, full of soft and gentle color, seem to come less readily, and the pink and blue creatures keep on vanishing over the darkened horizon. The spring that threatened to flourish just days earlier has retreated back into winter, and a bitter easterly wind whips around every building and street corner. Today, it is Friday, and Geraldine wants the latest figures to review over the weekend. As ever, Herb is on point to deliver. It seems to him that the department heads have faded into obscurity. They approve the files that Herb emails to them without a second glance, and Geraldine continues to be enthralled, enchanted almost, by the tables and charts that Herb sets on her desk at every demand. This morning, Geraldine's blouse is a vibrant cornflower blue, her smile brighter, her voice lighter. She calls Herb into her office. "Herb?" she smiles. "Did she just call me Herb? The board members have noticed your work. They want you to take on some more experimental forecasting." Herb's eyes drift past Geraldine's shoulder. Through the window, he sees a slender man in a tight red suit balancing on the edge of the window ledge. He's grinning at Herb, opening and closing his suit jacket, revealing something, a code perhaps, and then quickly concealing it, smirking as he does so. Behind, in the distance, the soothing colors of pastel fields flicker as marshmallow cats and dogs try to draw Herb's attention. The scarlet character outside the window watches, waiting. "Herb!" Geraldine's voice punctures Herb's distraction. This could mean a promotion, more pay, more prestige. Think about it over the weekend. Herb rattles his head, bringing himself back into the moment. "I'm sorry, Geraldine. It's been quite a week." He looks down at his hand. It looks paler than before, almost translucent under the harsh office lights. He swallows, his throat dry. "I'll get those figures to you this morning, ready for the weekend." The spreadsheet gapes at Herb. It flickers. Cells that were accurate earlier are now showing HRF and other disturbing error codes that Herb has never seen before. Other cells are suddenly formatted in red, their borders animated, serpents slithering around each red cell. Herb looks out of the window across the gray sky where trees bend and sway in the wind and litter from the street blows up in gusts. The red-suited man peeps impishly around the corner of the window, just enough that Herb sees his menacing grin. Then he steps fully into view. Herb notices the purple snake wrapped around the man's left leg, and on his right shoulder sits a butterfly with golden tipped wings. Somewhere in the distance, in what feels like another world, a dream within a dream, the blue and pink marshmallow creatures are trying to reach him, their little hats bobbing as they bounce over clouds. But the scarlet presence is looming closer, toying with the buttons on his red jacket. Open or closed, it mouths through the glass. The butterfly flaps and the snake slithers, its purple scales gleaming, waiting for Herb to notice the fresh set of numbers along its back. As Herb closes his eyes, he finds himself at an unfamiliar crossroads. One path stretches away in soft, gentle hues. It feels familiar and safe. He can see the marshmallow creatures playing in the distance, their hats bobbing as they bound through a pastel-tinted world of sunlit clouds. They wag their tails, tweak their mustaches, urging him to join them. But they are fading, their edges blurring. In the opposite direction, shadows twist into deeper, richer colors: purple, red, gold. The air sparks with energy that Herb can't see, and the red-suited man stands, waiting, his smirk widening as he temptingly holds his jacket open, revealing an array of numbers and equations. Herb rubs his eyes, looks again in each direction. Herb is compelled by something unfathomable, but he thinks he understands. At his desk, Herb works feverishly, head down. He is focused on completing the spreadsheet for Geraldine. By lunchtime, he has succeeded in his task. Geraldine is happy. She pats the papers on her desk fondly, like a favorite pet. She'll look at them over the weekend, she tells Herb. She trusts him to have done a good job. We rejoin Herbert Truelove the following morning. It is Saturday. His tousled head emerges from beneath the bedclothes, and he greets the weekend with a yawn, blinking at the light creeping between the gap in his thin bedroom curtains. He has slept well, remarkably well, in fact. It has been the best night's sleep Herb has had in a very long time. Those eyes of mine. The machine beeped, boiled and seethed. I pressed the button, and water leaked, filling the cup to its brim. A cup of coffee, pure. I opened the window wide, letting the breeze tingle the fuzz on my nape. Sat beneath it, picked up the cigarette from the ashtray that had burned lonely for so long that the ash stretched from its tip almost to the cotton, forming a bridge undisturbed by its weight. I shook it off and pulled on it. The taste of burned butt dominated the tobacco tang. The coffee cleansed it. Drops from the drizzle intruded on my domicile, enhancing the soothing effect of the wind on the dots they marred. The sun had tucked tail and crept behind clouds. Rest, the doctor had prescribed. Nerves, stretched thin, throbbed in harmony with the rain. Oh, the rain. How could I, Doc? The weather called my name. I donned my shoes and jacket, closed the door, strode down the stairs to the streets. The slabs of cement towered over, reaching for the skies. The drops welcomed me, painting me gently. A ball snuck in, got trapped between my eyes and glasses, while the rest rained down like arrows on a battlefield. People buzzed up and around, busy little bees. Yet, however or whomever I tried to peek at, all that I managed to see was but a blur, mangled by the shower, by the rain, by its tears. They paved a path for themselves, dug ruts on my glasses. My vision failed to pierce. I trailed what I assumed to be their tracks. When one's feet made space for themselves on the puddles as they stepped and left it vacant when they departed, that's when the ensuing spot got filled with water. It created a momentary footstep. That's what I followed, a fleeting moment, along the restless ponds, vibrating in seclusion from one another. The vista of concrete proved inescapable. For the moment, the puddles were left undisturbed. That's what they showed. A reflection of gray, hubs of broken dreams. The vehicles behaved strangely under the rain. They too beeped, stalled, and buzzed around. The path led me along the blocks, passing from one street to the other. The vistas remained the same. Were they copies of one another? Or was I stuck in place? I lifted my head and flicked the flock of drops off my locks. That was the third bus stop that I approached. The carrier reloaded, its travelers hurrying outside with new ones coming on board. To avoid the crowd, I lingered in my gait, pulled out my pack, and plucked a treat. The way it nested on my lips brought a moment of respite. The lighter struggled, producing sparks, again and again. Yet no flame. The rain dampened both. The bus drove off. I continued my journey with no obstacles in sight, threading the many tracks left behind. Need a light? A question asked from beneath the canopy of the stop. The mess on my glasses had turned to a layer. A coat of mist. A mush of hair, clothes, legs, and arms. And a lighter, lit with a gray-washed flame. I crouched, touched the light, and tasted the smoke, pulled my head back into the rain. What? You'll just leave? The tender voice continued, anchoring me on the dock. I pondered. Was one cigarette enough? No. I towed 2 butts out of their home and returned the gesture. My glasses slid as I crouched, parked on the peaking bone of my nose. The clouds had slid too, allowing the sun to shoot its beams on the glass walls of the bus stop. Their pallid reflection blinded me, but I felt the pack lighten. The person lagged, suggesting hesitation. Disturbed by the sudden change in the weather, I looked back at the sun, but it was no more. Thicker clouds had settled in. The rain was picking up heat. Don't miss the next one. If you wish to avoid the deluge, that is, I said, stowing the pack into my pocket. The hymning tone concealed a plea behind my ear, maybe one of attention or of interaction. Entertaining these ideas had brought me here, so I failed to see a reason for another attempt. My surroundings grew tired, a waterlogged world crying in its stead. Steps continued. The rain poured. The worse it got, the fewer people brooded. How did I end up here, I wondered, amid this city, amid the crosses of colorless walls, and amid the faceless people? How far had I wandered? How long it had been? I swerved on the road, heading towards the park. An island with different scenery. Or so I thought. The rain had dug its claws here too, washing away all that would help me recall what was. Think of what could have been. Instead, I was forced to watch what is in another gray landscape. The sky's tears battled with the leaves. The branches swung at one another. Fierce battles ensued. The road continued straight up to a fountain, where it diverged and transformed into a circle, and restoring itself back into a straight line, it continued. I sat near the formation, for the trees obeyed the road, and the sky, with its gray clouds, remained visible, and the battles fought turned into echoes from afar. The rain poured, thickening the layering clog on my glasses, changing it with another, never letting them rest. Down it poured. My cigarette had long been extinguished, yet the respite it brought remained all the same. And so I kept sucking on the wet cotton. Lost, I dabbled with questions I knew I shouldn't ask. A man's worst enemy was his own mind. I had hoped for the rain to wash away the colors of my brain too, but they remained, blinking ever so often, showing me what was. My clothes heavy, burdened with the rain, pulled me down on the bench. My hair, too, wet, as if splashed on my scalp. I bit the butt with my teeth and looked above, to the soaring skies. My eyes were protected, so I didn't flinch. Instead, I enjoyed the moment of rain, enjoyed the moment of solitude, the moment of respite. The rivers ran, the fountain spat, and the clouds rumbled. I remained. For how long could I remain? For how long would I? My legs pulled in pain, and noise had settled at the bottom of my feet, a numbing pump. My head ached. I pulled on my dimmed cigarette. In this park, I had hoped to encounter a spark of life. The leaves were falling, the branches were breaking from the wind, and my ankles drowned beneath the rivers. The pouring rain consumed. Hungry, it ate everything. But the pain, my teeth failed to cling on. My mouth gapped. I dropped my companion. It soaked, increased in weight, and sank. What was another lost cigarette in the rinsing sea?